The Number 2 Me and the Number 1 Girl. Volume 3. By Oshu. Translated by 1/4 Read Translations. Audiobook by Masquerade at Masquerade Audiobooks. Me, Her, and a Pair of Wings. Chapter 1. Good morning, Hajime. Oh, you're up early today. Good morning, Chinatsu. Yeah, I woke up early for some reason. Thanks for the breakfast as always. I'll handle the dishes. In the living room of my house, Chinatsu and I exchanged these words, both in our school uniforms. I had started to get used to Chinatsu's morning greetings. However, just because I was getting used to them didn't mean I found them any less adorable. Seeing Chinatsu's smile first thing in the morning always made my heart race. A month had passed since the day when our relationship changed. The trees that had been full of autumn leaves when we first met had now shed them, and were now adorned with a different kind of color. Those are the lights and decorations that marked the start of the chilly season. Today marked the end of the second semester at our high school. In a few days, the day when couples celebrate their love would arrive. A lot of important things had happened over the past month. We had many discussions, but before diving into those, I wanted to note the most important thing. As a high school freshman spending winter under the same roof as my girlfriend, I still remained chaste. That day, we fell asleep in the living room, wrapped in blankets and nestled close like mud. Waking up to each other's scent, I kissed her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Honestly, I felt my heart race at the sight of Chinatsu's sleepy face and worried about my morning breath, but I wanted to convince myself that being her boyfriend wasn't a dream, so I acted naturally. Then, after seeing Chinatsu hide her mouth with the blanket while smiling blissfully, I realized just how dazzling she was. I thought once again that the saying, "the one who falls in love first being at a disadvantage," continued even after becoming lovers. As we basked in our happiness, my stomach growled. Chinatsu seemed to have heard it as we exchanged amused glances and laughed together. I checked the clock, and although it was still early, we had just enough time for breakfast. Let's have something to eat. I'll toast some bread. I stood up as I spoke. Then I'll make some coffee. Oh, but I want to fix my hair a bit too. I have some clothes and makeup here that I usually use for my plain mode look. But Chinatsu stood up as well, seemingly concerned about her clothes and hair as she muttered. I shook my head and replied, "I'll handle the meal preparations. You can go to the convenience store to buy anything you might need. It's better than going back home since your dad might still be there." "Okay, thank you as always, Hajime." By the time Chinatsu returned with the things she needed, I already made a simple breakfast. I had also set the necessary utensils on the table for two. "I'm back. Can I change clothes for a bit?" Chinatsu called out to me as I prepared food in the kitchen. "Welcome back, Chinatsu." "Sure, you can use the room upstairs that's not mine. It used to be my little sister's room, but I've cleaned it up." "Oh, okay, I'll use it." "Or unless you want me to change here?" After hearing my words, she paused for a moment before nodding and teasingly suggesting she change in front of me, a mischievous smile on her face. Her ears turned red, betraying her casual tone. She was incredibly cute. Sigh, my girlfriend is super adorable. I almost said yes, but are you sure? Not yet. I didn't want to sit still and have myself get teased every time, so I said such a playful comeback, but I didn't expect her to blush even more after saying something like that. I nearly burned myself at her flustered response that I almost fumbled and burned myself. "I see. Not yet, huh?" After she changed, we sat down together for breakfast. Buttered toast, a simple omelette, some leftover ham, and a small salad with the last bits of lettuce. Considering it was a quick meal, it looked like a decent weekend breakfast. While I was thinking that, Chinatsu softly murmured, "Gosh, having a boyfriend who makes Sunday morning breakfast, amazing." Hearing her say that with such sincerity, even if she didn't mean for me to hear it, made me want to always make breakfast for her. It felt like I was head over heels for her. It was a peaceful, happy morning, almost as if the events of the previous day had just been a bad dream. Chapter 2. That day became one that Chinatsu would probably remember for the rest of her life. A day that should have been painful and difficult was overwritten with the happiness of sharing feelings with someone important. She woke up in the morning and felt the warmth beside her. She looked at Hajime's sleeping face. The feelings she had thought were overflowing last night still showed no sign of drying up. A calm, serene, and slightly ticklish feeling settled within her. She reached out and touched Hajime's hair, noticing how it got a bit messy in the morning. She felt happy knowing that she was the only one who knew this about him. Some of her friends had already experienced waking up next to their boyfriends and had shared their stories with excitement. Back then, Chinatsu had listened with a mix of envy while thinking, "He?" to herself. But now she understood the overwhelming joy that made one want to talk about it with others. She had kissed her boyfriend, slept next to him, and spent the night together. Despite feeling so fulfilled already, she was still looking forward to many more things. Thinking this with her sleepy mind, Chinatsu blushed as she fidgeted and tried to steady her breath. Hajime opened his eyes groggily, looked at her, and said, "Good morning." "Good morning." Chinatsu greeted Hajime back while thinking, "Gosh, I'm in trouble." The Chinatsu from before and the Chinatsu now were clearly different. Just exchanging morning greetings with Hajime made her heart race so much. Her heart, already overwhelmed, completely short-circuited when Hajime leaned in naturally and gently kissed her lips. She realized that, like sadness, happiness could also overflow and become saturated. Though this kind of saturation was certainly not unpleasant, she felt she must have been grinning foolishly. It was a bit embarrassing. Her body, now fully rested, started to signal its hunger. Embarrassed by the thought that Hajime might hear it, she blushed even more. But when Hajime's stomach growled too, they both laughed. After a bit of conversation, Chinatsu decided to go out to buy some clothes and other necessities. Although she could have found what she needed at a convenience store, there was a large drugstore across from the one near Hajime's house that also sold daily necessities. It was just opening, so she decided to check it out. The only person inside was the cashier lady. Her clothes from yesterday were a bit wrinkled from sleeping in them, but that couldn't be helped. She wanted to change her underwear, so she browsed the aisles. Eventually, her basket turned into a full overnight kit. Though she had already spent the night, she added items like a toothbrush, makeup, and travel-sized shampoo and conditioner, thinking she might want to take a shower. The thought of temporarily keeping these things at Hajime's house gave her a warm, indescribable feeling. At the checkout, the cashier glanced at her purchases and her appearance, then smiled warmly, which made Chinatsu feel a bit self-conscious. She walked back to Hajime's house, greeting people she passed with a smile. Although there weren't many long-time residents in the newly developed neighborhood, she still nodded politely to those she met before unlocking the door and entering. The house was filled with the smell of butter and something else that smelled delicious. "I'm back. Can I change clothes for a bit?" Seeing Hajime prepare their breakfast, she thanked him before asking, "Welcome back, Chinatsu." "Sure, you can use the room upstairs that's not mine. It used to be my little sister's room, but I've cleaned it up." "Oh, okay, I'll use it." "Or unless you want me to change here?" Hajime's mention of his sister's room made her hesitate, and she hid behind the shopping bags as she spoke. She did something she normally wouldn't have, and her ears were red in embarrassment. "I almost said yes, but are you sure?" Perhaps because Hajime saw how she hid herself in embarrassment that he teased her back with such a playful response. Honestly, she felt like saying, "If you really want to see, then I'll let you." "Not yet." Saying that, Chinatsu ran up the stairs. Her heart couldn't take any more. She was truly shocked with herself. She had never done anything particularly romantic before, and it wasn't as if he was her first boyfriend. Since when had she become such an innocent girl? The room was indeed clean. It still had a desk and bed, and photos of what seemed to be an active girl were pinned to a board on the wall. Her eyes were drawn to a photo in the center, a slightly younger Hajime and a girl wrapping her arm around him, flashing a peace sign. "She's really cute, my Ho-chan." "Sorry for borrowing your room for a bit," Chinatsu said softly as she began to change. She had something she wanted to ask Hajime to do later. Section A. This is too much happiness, Chinatsu thought the moment she went downstairs. There was already warm coffee with milk waiting for her. On the table, there were toast, omelets, ham, and even salad. Gosh, having a boyfriend who makes Sunday morning breakfast. Amazing. As she thought this, Hajime, looking a bit embarrassed, said, "It does feel like a weekend breakfast, doesn't it? Let's eat." "Yeah, thank you so much." Though it was a simple meal, Chinatsu felt she would never forget the taste and smell of this breakfast that day. Chapter 3. After finishing breakfast, it didn't take long for me to notice that Chinatsu seemed like she wanted to say something. While Chinatsu prepared the coffee, added the dishes. Even though our relationship had changed, the way we spent time together pretty much stayed the same. I know it's a bit late, but I'd like to meet your family. And, introduce myself as your girlfriend, Hajime." Chinatsu said this a little while after breakfast. Her words made me realize something. I hadn't once taken her into that room. I also felt like I wanted to introduce her to my family. "Yeah, you're right. I should introduce you too." I think if you were really able to meet them in real life, they would have been either really happy or very skeptical. Would they really be happy if they met me? Or rather, what do you mean by skeptical? Chinatsu asked, looking a bit anxious and then puzzled. Seeing her, I recalled my family before they were still alive. How do I put this? It wasn't that I had been avoiding remembering them, especially since I lit incense for them every day, but somehow, it felt like the memories I recalled now had a clearer hue. Nah, I should stop lying and making excuses. I had indeed been avoiding those memories. My family and my memories were always smiling. I was smiling too, and the reason why my memories, which had been devoid of color, changed was because I was able to cry yesterday. It was all thanks to Chinatsu. Because of that, talking about my family came naturally. If I introduced someone as beautiful as you, as my girlfriend, I don't know, but my mum would probably silently suspect me of kidnapping. Miho would glare at me thinking I used some kind of blackmail, and only my dad would have believed me with a very high level of enthusiasm. It might sound kind of annoying, but yeah, that's the kind of family we are. I saw Miho's photo. She was such a cute girl. I nodded, realizing she must have seen the photos in Miho's room. "Well, do you want to look at the photos later? The altar room is over here." Originally, my parents' bedroom was on the first floor, and the second floor had my room, Miho's room, and a guest room for when my uncle or other guests came over. But now, the first floor room is the altar room. I explained while I led her from the living room down the hall to the back room. It was the only Japanese-style room in our Western-style house, insisted on by my mother. When I opened the door, a faint smell of incense lingered. There were 3 photos on the altar, which was something I bought back then while not knowing it was expensive. The displayed photos were the ones where they had formal wear, smiling. It was taken during the time Miho had entered middle school. There was no specific ritual, but since we had the chance, we decided to light the 2 candles placed side by side. My father had always lived spontaneously, while my mother was strict about such traditions. My mother had a solid personality and imposing presence, whereas my father, with his handsome looks, was quite popular among the neighboring ladies. Miho inherited his good looks, while people often remarked that I resembled my mother. As I didn't share my father's features, I simply pointed to the photos and introduced them to Chinatsu, explaining as I lit the incense from the candles. "Dad, Mom, and Miho." "This is embarrassing, but this is Chinatsu, my girlfriend." I introduced her, hoping somehow my words could reach my family even though I knew it was impossible. Section. The smell of melting candles and incense filled the room. Hajime sat in front of the altar, introducing Chinatsu as he clasped his hands together. After a few moments, Hajime moved aside, and Chinatsu took his place. She knelt politely on the cushion, lighting the incense just as Hajime had done. She looked at the photos. Hajime said he resembled his mother, but there were also parts of him that looked like his father. His eyes and nose were his mother's, but his ears and mouth were his father's. Miho's smile was incredibly cute. She wondered if they would have become friends if they had met each other. Now that I think about it, her photo in the center of the room isn't taken with a friend or her lover, but with her brother, Miho-chan. Are you perhaps a brocon? If so, we might have to fight over him. Thinking such thoughts, Chinatsu imagined how fun it would have been to be around Hajime's family. Father, mother, and Miho-chan, I'm sorry for the late introduction despite visiting so often. I'm Hajime-kun's girlfriend, Minamino Chinatsu. Even though she had paid her respects in front of an altar before, it was the first time she genuinely wanted to speak to the ones beyond. But as soon as she did, the words flowed effortlessly. She spoke freely, letting her heart guide her. Even though she knew her words weren't truly reaching anyone, and it was just Hajime and her in the room, she found herself saying what she would have wanted them to hear if they were really there. Hajime-kun and I were classmates, but even though we hadn't spoken until this fall, he was still so kind to me, and I'm sure he was raised by very wonderful parents. I'm an only child, so I don't know what having siblings is like, but I'm sure that he must have been a great older brother. Just then, Chinatsu heard the sound of Hajime moving behind her, and she could tell, even without looking, that he was embarrassed. And since she had the chance, she decided to say everything as if she was speaking to his family, making sure Hajime heard it all. She wanted him to blush completely, even though she found her own eagerness to be a bit surprising. But she truly did want to say these things. She spoke candidly and continued for a while. She shared everything, what had happened since they met, how she felt, how overjoyed she was that he saw behind her mask, how painful it was to understand each other's helplessness, and how her heart raced when he helped her. She even expressed how she wished she could have talked to his family directly, just once. Chinatsu kept talking, and when she went on to talk about what happened the other night, Hajime, unable to handle it anymore, opened the door and stepped out. She continued until she finished everything she wanted to say. Chapter 4. To be honest, it felt like some kind of torture. I couldn't bear listening to Chinatsu talk about how we met, what happened yesterday, and how she felt about a lot of things, so I left her alone while she continued talking, and retreated to the living room. So, that's how she thinks of me. So, she feels the same way as me. She really does like me. She really is my girlfriend now. Listening to her words and realizing such thoughts, as a guy, I was incredibly happy, but it also felt like my family, who weren't here, was grinning at me, and the embarrassment outweighed my desire to listen. Bzzz. My phone on the table vibrated. It was from Suzuka-san. Yes, hello. Oh, thank goodness you finally answered. Neither of you answered your phones, and I was worried something might have happened yesterday. Are you both okay? Sorry. I left my phone on the living room table and Chinatsu-san is in another room. We're fine, and nothing really happened. We're just staying at home together. There might have been a few missed calls, but I hadn't noticed since I was in the other room. Good to hear. By the way, last night, even though both of your phones were nearby, the reason why Chinatsu didn't answer was because both of you were. Pardon? I swear I didn't do anything inappropriate to your daughter. And the warmth of our embrace and the softness of the kisses we shared suddenly flashed in my mind. Since it wasn't as if we had done nothing at all, my response ended up being a bit vague. If it's you Hajime-kun, then it's perfectly fine with me. But, even if you're responsible and financially stable, if you don't really have a goal set for the future, it would be at least better if you finished high school. Other than that, you're free to do whatever. Suzuka-san, it's not something I should be saying, but could you please refrain from saying such things to your daughter's boyfriend, Fufu? Wait. Really? In response to Suzuka-san's usual teasing, I asked her to stop saying such things. After laughing at my words, she suddenly let out a genuinely surprised happy voice. You two finally became a couple, huh? And where's Chinatsu? Oh. Could it be that the real reason why she hasn't answered the phone is because she's still in bed? Maybe her body's feeling sluggish or something. Hajime-kun, you are a boy, so I guess you don't feel the same after the first time. Should I make some red bean rice to celebrate? Why do I have to be in the hospital for a checkup at a time like this? Suzuka-san, hello? Are you still even listening? For your information, I'm still a virgin. Hajime? Who are you talking to? As Suzuka-san rambled on without listening on the other end of the phone, I ended up blurting out something awkward. Just then, I heard Chinatsu's voice behind me, colder than I'd ever heard it before. Everything felt like a complete disaster. I wanted to cry. Despite the humiliating morning caused by my girlfriend and her mom, I now found myself back at the hospital with said girlfriend to see her mom. It was past afternoon. We could have come after lunch, but due to a scheduling issue with a lawyer I knew, who wanted to discuss something, we arrived without eating lunch. I'm sorry, Hajime, for dragging you along, and for what my mom said earlier. I'll make sure to give her a piece of my mind. Chinatsu, walking a bit ahead of me, apologized and expressed her frustration towards Suzuka-san, whom we were about to visit. However, I sensed that part of it was just her way of hiding her embarrassment. It's fine, really. It's not just your problem anymore. And I'm sorry for blurting things out and telling Suzuka-san without informing you beforehand. It's really fine, no need to worry, I continued. I wanted to reassure her, but also wanted to apologize. I had let my mouth slip without thinking, and I felt bad because what Chinatsu likely intended to do was to tell her mother at the right moment. I knew we'd probably get teased about it. Still, given that we had to discuss her father, which was a heavy topic, I tried shifting our conversation to a lighter subject and hoped that it made her somewhat feel better. No, I planned to tell her anyway, and she would have found out eventually since I know she'd ask about it. It's just, I wish I could have talked to Mom about things like this sooner. At the same time, it feels like the usual boundaries that families have are slowly disappearing between us. Haha, I was worried that Suzuka-san might have been feeling down, but I'm glad she seemed fine. Even if it's just a front, it's important to stay cheerful. Yeah. And the way she was teasing us didn't seem like she was faking it. Thanks again, Hajime. Saying that, Chinatsu turned around, walked backward, and smiled at me. And thanks for saying that this isn't just my problem anymore. Seriously, it's because you always say things like that so casually that my heart is always racing. Chapter 5. We arrived at the hospital room and knocked on the door. Almost immediately, we heard a response, and Chinatsu and I opened the door to step inside. Hey, Hajime-kun, it's been a while. Besides Suzuka-san, who was lying in bed, there was a middle-aged man in a suit standing by her side. I know who he was. Tsukasa-san. It's been a while, I said, bowing my head. I came from a family full of lawyers, so they named me Tsukasa, which means to administer law. True to my name, I ended up going to law school and becoming a lawyer. Unlike this guy, I lived quite a predictable life. He laughed as he referred to my uncle, and then introduced himself as a friend from the best law school in Japan, which my uncle had casually dropped out of. He had been quite a great help to me. After the family accident, he assisted with the inheritance issues, arranging the house to be in my uncle's name while still listing me as the sole occupant. He also took care of various other legal matters. Though my uncle moved around the globe frequently, Tsukasa-san stayed in touch through calls and emails, often checking in on us. When I reached out about Suzuka-san and Chinatsu's father's situation, he readily agreed to take on the case himself. And you must be Chinatsu-san. Nice to meet you. I'm Morita Tsukasa. You could say I'm a relative of Hajime-kun here. Nice to meet you. I'm Minamino Chinatsu. Hajime-kun has been a great help to me. Tsukasa-san glanced at Chinatsu gently and then gave me a meaningful look. I see. So, Chinatsu-san, may I ask about your specific relationship with Hajime-kun? Eh? Well, Hajime-kun is my boyfriend. With a serious expression, Tsukasa-san asked Chinatsu directly. Her stuttering response made him break into a broad smile. Ah, I see. I see. Well, that's wonderful. Hajime-kun, you never mentioned having such a lovely girlfriend the last time we spoke. Though, I did suspect there was more to it when you introduced me to Minamino-san, saying you needed to discuss something. Come on, Tsukasa-san, you're making Chinatsu uncomfortable. Please stop teasing her. Besides, you said you came all the way here despite being busy, but that's the first thing you'll say, I said before letting out a sigh. No. No. It's important. If I'm going to handle matters for someone who might become family, it's good to be thorough. Oh, but remember, all clients are equal is my motto, so let's keep this off the record, he said, grinning mischievously while raising a finger to his lips, making both Chinatsu and I exchange glances in response. Despite running a well-known law firm around Nisha Tokyo, he had a mature yet playful and down-to-earth personality. Now, let's get to the main topic. First of all, Hajime-kun, Chinatsu-san, you both did well. Escaping in a taxi to protect a girl isn't something everyone could do. Well, it is as they say, love changes people. Tsukasa-san, can we please stick to the main topic? And by the way, is it fine for me to stay here and listen? I assumed he was deliberately trying to sidetrack the conversation, so I immediately interjected to bring it back on track. As I voiced my concerns, Chinatsu gently took my hand. When I looked over, Suzuka-san was also nodding in agreement. It seemed that she had already discussed everything with Tsukasa-san. He smiled at us before turning serious again. All right, Chinatsu-san. Thanks to the information Hajime provided to Suzuka-san, your mother, we're proceeding with the custody case. Even though the other side most likely also has a lawyer, they'll likely accept our terms. But, well, Suzuka-san is considering revising the terms. And on top of that, there are two rather difficult decisions you need to make. Okay. Firstly, in cases where the divorcing couple has a child over the age of 15, the child's wishes often play a significant role in custody decisions. This applies even when the father is clearly at fault, as in this case. Depending on which parent the child chooses to live with, the arrangements for child support and alimony will differ. Yes, in this case, due to your father having an affair. Simply put, the custody is already leaning towards Suzuka-san without giving you a proper opportunity to express your wishes. Yes, I heard. That's why Dad. Exactly. Although we can only speculate, we believe that's what he intended. To counter this, we need you to formally document that you wish to live with Suzuka-san. Yes. Honestly, I can't trust my father after he spoke that way about someone important to me and said bad things about Mom. Besides, Mom talked things through with me properly. So, I want to stay with her. Chinatsu. Suzuka-san dabbed at her eyes as she listened to Chinatsu's resolute words in response to Tsukasa-san's explanation. I silently stood by, watching them. Thank you. Now, this is a decision made by Suzuka-san. She will retain the rights to the apartment house and most of the household items. Since both of their savings were already kept in separate accounts, those will remain as they are. Furthermore, she has chosen not to request any child support or alimony. Chinatsu let out a confused sound. I was also confused by her decisions. It was almost as if the one who complains first loses, right? Yes. I don't really understand what kind of work you both do, but it feels wrong considering what happened the other day, as if saying that the first one to call the other selfish wins. That's true. I understand why it might seem that way. But, Chinatsu, from a financial standpoint, we don't need the money. At least for me and for your living expenses, we'll be fine. Really? Chinatsu, sounding a bit surprised, responded to her mother's words. Yes. I earned as much as your father as an office worker. It might seem odd, but even now, despite my health issues, my job remains secure and my position is stable because the company seems to have a lot of trust in me. My decision to pursue financial claims was more about my pride as a woman and a bit of retaliation. I thought I'd take some money from him. Suzuka-san chuckled sadly and glanced at me before continuing. But when it started to affect you too, it really hit me as a parent. So, I decided to let go of my pride and cut all financial ties. And with your decision, Chinatsu, I don't think anything like that will happen again. Of course, it would be a lie to say I'm not disappointed. But this is for the best. Mum. Chinatsu's voice cracked slightly as she responded. Seeing her pained expression, Tsukasa-san continued in a kind, yet professional tone. Lastly, regarding child support. Legally, children are entitled to it, or you could say that it's a parental duty. Although Suzuka-san's stance is as she stated, you, Chinatsu-san, have the right to decide. While divorce is an issue between the married couple, Suzuka-san, your mother, and Junji-san, your father, it doesn't change the fact that he is your biological father, even though you guys are no longer a family legally. Tsukasa-san paused, ensuring that Chinatsu was following his explanation. Additionally, you need to decide if you want to allow your father the right to visitation. As with child support, it's generally better to formalize these decisions in a legal document. I understand. First, as for child support, I'll follow whatever my mother decides. I don't fully grasp the financial implications, but if it's manageable for her, I'll accept it. I'll also work part-time if needed. And regarding my father, right now, I can't even think about seeing him again. But I still have memories of him being a kind father to me, so I might feel differently in the future. Thank you. We will proceed accordingly with child support. For visitation, as per your wishes, we'll establish that any contact must be initiated by you and prevent any unilateral attempts from your father. However, if you want to see him, we can arrange visitation opportunities accordingly. Does that sound acceptable? Please do so. And, thank you for considering my feelings. Of course. Since you're the precious girlfriend of someone I care about. Now, I'll need you to sign some documents. I'll prepare the proper paperwork and arrange an appointment soon. Well then, Minamino-san, I have some preparations to make, so I'll take my leave now. Take your time to discuss things as a family, and if you change your mind or need anything else, don't hesitate to reach out. And, Hajime-kun, it goes without saying, but take good care of her, alright? Thank you very much. Yes, take care, Tsukasa-san, we both replied. Tsukasa-san nodded, picked up his briefcase, and left swiftly. After seeing him off, we turned back to Suzuka-san. Thank you, both of you. Especially you, Chinatsu. Thank you for what you said. Suzuka-san's face seemed to relax, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. It's fine, Mum. But, why did you insist that Hajime be here? Not that I mind. I'm glad he was with me and I wanted him to know. It's just. Chinatsu's curiosity mirrored my own. I was grateful to be included, but I didn't see why my presence was necessary. Ara, you really have changed. My dear daughter, you're the picture of a young woman in love. Mum? Suzuka-san looked at Chinatsu as she rubbed her cheeks, which made the latter respond in fluster. Ignoring her daughter's state, she continued talking. However, her next words made the both of us freeze. Well, the main reason I asked Hajime-kun to be here is because there's something I wanted to tell the both of you. To put it simply, could Chinatsu stay at your place for a while? Hajime-kun, it might be around 2 to 3 weeks, and possibly be until the winter break, depending on the results of my follow-up checkups after my discharge and adjustments to my diet among other things. What? Suzuka-san said this so casually, but isn't she essentially suggesting that we live together? Chapter 6. Wait, what are you saying, Mum? Chinatsu's voice echoed through the hospital room. It was fortunate that we were in a private room, though I knew her voice could be heard beyond the door. However, I didn't feel like pointing that out, because I was in the same emotional state. Ara, you two are a couple now, aren't you? Then there's no problem. There's a huge problem. Rather than that, why are you so enthusiastic while we're the ones who are objecting? It's usually the other way around. Hajime-kun, you wouldn't mind if a cute girlfriend like Chinatsu stayed for a while with you, right? As Chinatsu and Suzuka-san exchanged words, it was inevitable that the topic would turn to me. Well, I wouldn't dislike it, of course. But, Suzuka-san, are you okay with this? As her mother? Of course, I didn't dislike the idea, but still, you two are surprisingly wet behind the ears compared to kids these days. Well, it's a good thing, but, even so, the thing is, even if you two are dating and I get discharged, I can't always come home early from work. Besides, Hajime-kun, you live alone, right? Given how close you two are, Do you still think nothing will happen between the two of you someday? She was shockingly direct and absolutely right. Indeed, whether Chinatsu stayed over or not, if we intended to take that step, there was nothing to stop us except my own hesitation. Well, but, you used to say, Hajime-kun and I aren't like that. But now, you are, right? Also, seriously speaking, your father still has a key to the house. Until that's resolved, it's worrying to leave you home alone. Mum. And, Hajime-kun's place is in a residential area where strangers can't just wander in, right? It's close to school and, I'm sure, there are extra rooms in his house. Well, even if you decide to share a room, I won't stop you though. Ara. How scary. Anyway, what do you think? It's not like I have relatives nearby that we can rely on. Of course, there's the option of a hotel, or, worst case, you could take some time off school and stay with distant relatives. But both options can be worrying and aren't ideal, and being apart after just becoming a couple wouldn't be fun, right? Suzuka-san said as such before looking at me. I see. I get what you're trying to say. And yes, I agree. To be honest, I would also feel uneasy leaving Chinatsu alone. We will also need to go to her apartment to get some things. But yes, I do have space. If you, Suzuka-san, give your consent, and if Chinatsu doesn't mind, it might be a good idea. Though my self-control could be an issue, I responded, though my last words were barely audible. Thank you. And, Chinatsu, your dear boyfriend is apparently okay with the idea. With all that reasoning, I can't possibly say no. And, it's not like I dislike the idea either. Hajime, are you really okay with it? She looked at me worriedly, so I nodded. Yeah, it's fine. Besides, I can just let you use my hose room, and the house has a guest room too, and we've already had meals together a few times. Indeed, until now we had spent a bit more time together in the evenings, shared breakfast, took bath. No, scratch that. Well, there should be no problems. Then it's settled. Although we agreed to split the food costs, I'll cover everything. I'll give you the money later, Chinatsu, and if you need to buy anything extra, just let me know. With Suzuka-san's words, we nodded in agreement. And so, until the day of the end of term ceremony when Suzuka-san would be discharged, Chinatsu and I decided to live together. I just have something to discuss with Chinatsu for a bit, Suzuka said, and Hajime stepped out of the room, mentioning he needed to make a call to an acquaintance. The sudden turn of events left Chinatsu's mind reeling. I see. So, starting today, I'm going to be staying over at Hajime's house. As Chinatsu stood there in a daze, her mom suddenly called her. Chinatsu, are you alright? You're spacing out. How can you act so nonchalantly about this? Whose fault do you think it is? Ara. What do you mean? You should at least be grateful to have such an understanding parent. Well, right, but that's not the point. Mom, did you know that you've been acting so differently lately? Geez, Fufu. True. I wouldn't normally say such things, but since it's Hajime-kun, I told you, didn't I, to do your best to make sure you don't lose him. And, you've done well. Not really. I haven't done anything. Hajime did everything. He helped me, held me, and asked me to be his girlfriend. Ara, I never thought I'd be embarrassed hearing my daughter's love story at this age. Fufu. But, I'm really happy for you, Chinatsu. Saying that, Suzuka patted her head. I wonder how long it had been since Mom had done that. Chinatsu felt like it had been ages ago to the point that she could barely remember, but it was also nostalgic in a way. Now, let's talk about something important. Yeah, about Dad. Is that why Hajime had to leave? No. There's something more important than that. Chinatsu had assumed that her mother had something more to talk about her father, but her quick denial left Chinatsu puzzled. Just then, her mother started to speak solemnly. Listen, I encouraged you to live together, and as a couple, things might naturally progress. But you have to make sure not to have a child, okay? Hajime-kun is mature and responsible, but he's still a boy. Listening to her mother, Chinatsu froze on the spot, seemingly unable to process the unexpected words. I'm being serious, you know, Suzuka continued. In case something will happen. Let's see. You're not usually one to get seriously ill, so you probably haven't been here before, but here. This hospital has a gynecology department with female doctors who can handle those situations. And here is some money. Make sure to go there once and get a patient card. Suzuka sent the hospital's website link to Chinatsu's phone and handed her a considerable amount of money she had apparently prepared in advance. Chinatsu mechanically put the money into her wallet, still struggling to catch up with the conversation. Times are changing. And I won't say you can't do anything, but at least finish high school, and if you haven't decided on a career path yet, having a college degree gives you more options. You can't leave these matters entirely to men, you need to take responsibility for yourself. Do you understand? Chinatsu, of course, knew about such things. She couldn't deny having desires, and this morning, she had thought about eventually having that kind of relationship with Hajime. But this was not how she imagined it would go, and she couldn't help but feel that something was off. How am I going to look Hajime in the eye after this? With these thoughts, and her mom's satisfied expression following her lecture, Chinatsu left the hospital room feeling overwhelmed. Chapter 7. Phew. We finally arrived. It was really tough, wasn't it? You too? You did well, Hajime-kun, Misaki-san said. She, along with Yuji-san, helped us unload Chinatsu's luggage from the roof rack. Chinatsu and I stepped out of their van and thanked them. The reason they were here was because, after everything that happened, I had asked Yuji-san for a favor. He and his wife Misaki-san owned a relatively large vehicle, probably because they sometimes transported store supplies. Knowing that I lived alone, they had always told me to call if I ever needed urgent help. Remembering this, even though I knew it was somewhat impolite, I called them, and both of them came right away. Fortunately, when we went to Chinatsu's apartment, there were no signs of her further being there. While we didn't know the details, we guessed he had probably returned to their current home. From there, we packed the essentials Chinatsu needed for school and some clothes into a travel bag, and then Chinatsu and I headed to my place in Yuji-san and Misaki-san's van. Neither of them asked any questions, and I was hesitant to divulge too much about someone else's family issues. But since they have been quite a great help to Chinatsu, and I also trusted them, I decided to give them a brief explanation on the way. Yuji-san drove while I sat in the passenger seat to give him directions, and Chinatsu and Misaki-san sat in the back. Chinatsu began to share her family situation. Yuji-san, as usual, didn't say much but nodded silently, while Misaki-san seemed quite excited, probably because Chinatsu described me in an overly flattering way. Listening to their animated conversation from the back seat was a bit embarrassing. And so, we returned to the time Misaki-san said her first few comments. In any case, the move, albeit a temporary one, was successfully completed. Section. Inside the house, Chinatsu and I placed her luggage on the floor. Although there wasn't much to say about the layout of the house, I figured we needed to decide where Chinatsu would stay. As I started thinking about this, the reality that Chinatsu would be staying and not going back to her home set in, and my heart began to race. Trying to keep calm, I made a suggestion. For now, would you like to use my hose room, Chinatsu? The guest room is a bit cluttered with storage, and we might need to buy a few things. Chinatsu. Her response seemed a bit unclear. Maybe she preferred the guest room over a room with my hose belongings. I called her name again, but she seemed distracted and wasn't taking off her shoes in the entrance. Is something wrong? Hey, Hajime. Yes? Looking concerned, I spoke to her again, and she looked at me with a very serious expression. I know I'm inexperienced, but please take care of me. Suddenly, she bowed her head, her ears turning red. Her gesture was so adorably earnest that I couldn't help but PFFT, ha 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 ha. Laughter bubbled up from deep inside me, and I couldn't stop it. I see, so it wasn't just me. Hey, what's so funny, huh? Chinatsu uttered with a red face, clearly flustered as she stood on the doorway. Sorry, haha, but really, now? We just packed your stuff, had a long chat with Misaki-san and Yuji-san, and now, in my house where you've been to many times already, you're saying that? I can't help it, you know that. Just up until now, It wasn't just the two of us alone, but now, with all my school stuff and clothes here, and you talking about which room and all that, it suddenly feels real. On top of that, why do you seem so calm about it?" As she spoke, her embarrassment turned to frustration. I apologized and tried to suppress myself from laughing again before picking up her luggage and saying, "Welcome, Chinatsu." Honestly, I was incredibly nervous too, but knowing how you, who was preparing your things so calmly earlier, were just as nervous as me, I just couldn't hold my laughter. "And, it made me happy too." "Unfair," she said as she lightly punched my stomach before whispering a soft "I'll be in your care" section. After pulling ourselves together and bringing in all the luggage, Chinatsu and I sat in the living room as usual. We each poured coffee into our cups, and while I liked slowly sipping my coffee hot, Chinatsu liked hers with plenty of milk and only drinking it once it was warm. Although this is quite random. While I always place my cup anywhere on the table, Chinatsu always places hers on the same spot, to the point where a faint coffee cup ring could be seen on it. Even before being in our current relationship, I had felt that the mark was like a small but significant connection between us, a detail I had never tried to erase and a secret I didn't want Chinatsu to know. Our relationship had evolved from classmates who had never spoken to each other, to friends, and then from friends to lovers. That being said, the first problem we needed to consider was how we should be acting towards each other at school from now on. "To be honest, I'd like to tell everyone that you are my boyfriend, but more than that." "Yes?" I nodded, as Chinatsu struggled to find the right words. Of course, I knew she wasn't embarrassed that I was her boyfriend. There was another reason why she didn't want to make it public. It was for my own sake. The moment Chinatsu and I entered the world of high school, our worlds diverged. This was the result of the choices we had made and the paths we had taken. I chose to stay quiet and avoided connections, while Chinatsu's was full of interactions she managed expertly. And both of us knew how damaging unsubstantiated rumors could be. Just then, Chinatsu spoke up. I feel the most comfortable when I'm with you, Hajime. And more than anything, I liked how I can be myself when I am around you." Strange, isn't it? I felt that myself's version of trying to live my life for my own sake is far cuter than the version where I always pretend just to have everyone like me. It's unfair how you can call yourself cute without it sounding awkward at all. What's unfair is how you always like to tease me, but the way you express it seems to be as if you're showering me with compliments and at the same time, making me feel loved. We bantered playfully, words flowing easily between us. Was this one of those moments, a scene from novels, anime, or games where lovers flirted and teased each other? It was surreal to think it was happening to me. It's kind of scary, In the midst of our light-hearted exchange, Chinatsu shared her true feelings. We often opened up to each other in moments like these. "You're quite popular, after all." "Well, to be honest, I think if people found out I had a boyfriend, they would be coming in droves, making us suffer under a lot of pressure, both in a good and bad way." "Yeah, it's fine for me, though." Such words were definitely how I could sum up what I'm feeling at the moment, but, honestly, I'd like to think it wouldn't affect our relationship at all. But it would probably wear us down. Yeah, she's right. Human willpower is often no match for persistent and unseen negativity. Before you know it, you might give up on something, just as I once did. Giving up on Chinatsu was unthinkable for me, but I knew that the strain would cause us to lose something, whether it be time, energy, or relationships with other people. That's why I don't want anyone to come between us. When you put it like that, it sounds like you've turned into a yandere girlfriend, but honestly, it makes me really happy. Geez, there you go again, saying things like that. But, yeah, that's how it is. So, is it okay if we keep things as they are for now? Yes. Thank you, Chinatsu. There's no need to thank me. Also, I don't want to lie. So if someone asks or if I get a confession, I'll just say I already have someone important. While that, in itself, might cause a stir, Chinatsu thought that if she denied every possibility of her important someone being one of the boys that is popular among all the girls, there wouldn't be any problems. I knew she considered my feelings and that I might feel down if she was suddenly confessed to, or if someone asked if she had a boyfriend and she denied it. The fact that she didn't want to lie about it, instead of just brushing it off, was a kindness I couldn't help but love deeply. Thus, we decided on how we'd handle our relationship at school. But someday, when I don't feel an ounce of hesitation, when I can properly stand beside her without feeling worn down from all the judgment, when I can properly have that resolve, I would properly tell Chinatsu myself. For now, though, I'll cherish this time and carve that promise in my heart. Chapter 8. The gentle winter sunlight filtered into the room through the thin curtains. Even though Chinatsu wasn't particularly sensitive to the cold, the chill of the morning made it hard for her to leave the warmth of the blanket. Finally escaping the temptation, she managed to get up, stretched, and greeted the owner of the photo in the middle of the room. "Good morning, Miho-chan." Usually, she'd head straight to the bathroom, but for the past few days, Chinatsu had made it a point to tidy herself up in front of the mirror first. It was Friday, marking the 6th morning since Sunday. By now, she no longer had trouble sleeping. Since Chinatsu had just woken up, she hadn't put on any makeup. However, she felt uncomfortable being seen by Hajime with her bed hair in a defenseless state. Although the idea of living together had a certain appeal to her, because of her mother's words, she felt a little bit reluctant. However, a certain bit of happiness still welled up within her. The act of living together, on the other hand, meant seeing both the good and bad sides of each other, and both Hajime and Chinatsu were still figuring out the right distance to keep. Sometimes, she felt loved by how Hajime maintained that distance, and other times she squirmed at the thought of how they were trying to adjust to each other. That being said, there were no major problems. Chinatsu and Hajime had gotten used to being together more than they had expected. It was refreshing for Chinatsu to realize that, despite thinking she knew Hajime well, there were still many things she didn't know about him. More than anything, she became acutely aware of her femininity in ways she hadn't imagined before. She thought to herself, "Love sure is amazing." She reflected on their life together since Monday. Section. Living together meant knowing each other's whereabouts in the house and telling each other beforehand if the other wants to use the bathroom. Meaning, there are no awkward encounters such as getting inside the bathroom and finding the other naked. Perhaps it would take a downpour to create the kind of scenarios often seen in novels. Chinatsu realized that those events don't happen naturally in daily life unless one of them deliberately tried to make it happen. Or at least, according to my research. After all, there are no signs of something happening between us at all. Initially, Chinatsu thought about taking turns making breakfast, but soon recognized Hajime's superior cooking skills and decided to become the dishwashing expert instead. Her pride was a small price to pay for delicious meals. While Hajime excelled at cooking, he wasn't as good at tidying up, whereas Chinatsu was. This made Chinatsu feel as if they complement each other, which made her very happy. They would eat breakfast together but go to school separately. To manage the rumors, Chinatsu made sure that she had an explanation ready to tell someone in her circle. Things like if she wasn't at the station or on the train in the morning, it was because her mother was hospitalized and she had to take care of things at home, or she was staying with relatives. People generally didn't question things once they had an answer. As long as Chinatsu didn't misuse her influence, she figured she could use it to manage the situation smoothly. Usually, Chinatsu would leave first, as Hajime would stay home reading a book until the last minute. They had already confirmed that no other students from their school lived nearby, and considering how Hajime isn't that social, the route he takes allowed him to travel to school without encountering anyone from school. Whenever Chinatsu is about to leave or during small moments, she would often fix her hair or uniform in front of Hajime and ask, "How do I look?" just to hear him say she was cute. She would ask that every time, knowing how Hajime would respond. "I'm so sly, really really sly." If she saw a friend doing this, she would immediately avert her gaze and internally scream, "How sly." Yet, she was doing it herself. She had always heard that love was blind and that love changes people. She would always think to herself, "Hey, is that so?" But she hadn't expected it to apply to her. No, unfortunately, mine is different. She wasn't blindly in love, She was aware of her feelings. On top of that, she still stepped forward from those feelings. It was probably because of that choice that love changed her as a person. Section. During the whole week at their school, Hajime avoided looking at or talking to Chinatsu. Despite Chinatsu occasionally glancing over naturally, their eyes never met. She noticed he spoke with other girls occasionally, although only about school matters. He never did with her. Chinatsu began to subtly jab at Hajime about it during the Wednesday. Hey, even though we're hiding it, isn't it a bit too much that you never look at me? It feels like you're ignoring me and it makes me a bit lonely, but we text each other at school. No, true. But I still glance at you sometimes, especially when you're skipping PE or eating lunch. You never even glance my way. If I did, though, I'm afraid my feelings might slip out. Hajime was the kind of guy who, despite being incredibly reliable in tough situations like when pulling Chinatsu away to escape from her father, or protecting her with his back, would blush deeply and get extremely flustered over such things. Chinatsu had to restrain herself from pouncing on him whenever she saw him like that. Geez, just act a bit more naturally. It's even weirder if it looks like you're avoiding me on purpose. You know, just glance over occasionally, and smile if our eyes meet. Naturally, huh? True. All right, I'll put in maximum effort. I mean, I'll do my best. Geez, do you really need to use so much effort just to not let your feelings slip out? This is not good. Chinatsu thought as he found Hajime nodding to himself. Cute. Likewise, she thought the same after hearing her completely sweet and affectionate voice. The past Minamino Chinatsu thought that calling a boy cute was just because she liked saying the word to others. However, she was wrong. After all, it has a different meaning now compared to a year ago. No doubt. Section. After school, in exchange for not being able to hang out with them, I spent a little time with my close friends from class. My circle of friends aren't exactly composed of flashy gals, but with pretty and cute girls. Saki was on the girls' basketball team. She was tall, slim, and beautiful, more popular with girls than boys. Despite her beautiful appearance, she had a fiery temper and had been infatuated with Satou from the boys' basketball team since she entered the school. To be honest, she could be quite scary, especially when she sees someone getting close to him. But now, I came to understand her possessive feelings a bit. Just a bit. There were always those who irresponsibly suggested that Satou and I would make a good couple, so I fully supported Saki to avoid any drama. I also made sure to show my support through my actions and words. While it might have been an option to reveal my relationship with Hajime to her just to set her mind at ease and ensure her silence, I hadn't had a peaceful enough school life to trust in talks like just between us girls. Yoko was a petite, calm girl who loved to eat. Her slightly brown hair, which was apparently natural since birth, gave her a squirrel-like appearance. She kept her bangs low on purpose to avoid standing out. If she showed off her cute face and her impressive chest, I bet she'd be much more popular with the boys. I wonder what Hajime thinks. Mine aren't exactly small either. She was smart and the balancer of our group. She listened to everyone's complaints calmly and was surprisingly okay with spicy gossip. Judging by how well she handled interactions with boys, I thought she either had a boyfriend in middle school or was secretly seeing someone now. I have no intentions of prying further, though. She's a super nice girl to the point that if it weren't for what happened in middle school, she could have been my best friend. I even thought that she might have already seen through my mask but chose not to say anything about it. Rina was the epitome of a pure and innocent beauty. She had black hair, long eyes, and fair skin. Even though she never dressed provocatively, just one slip of her bare skin could sometimes make even me, another girl, blush. She was a member of the archery club. Unlike Saki, Rina was as pure and innocent as she looked and actually came from a wealthy family. She even had a fiancé of similar family background. It was a fact she didn't bother to hide and was apparently arranged by her parents. She was from another world. Yet, she never flaunted her background and always maintained her elegance. I even wondered at one point how someone could learn to exude such grace. By the way, her fiancé apparently had another girlfriend, but it's not something I should be prying about. When other girls asked her about it, she would skillfully stop it and even sometimes change the subject to lean towards the one who asked it. Although I might be wearing my mask in front of them, it doesn't change the fact that this group consisted of nice girls. We all might seem very close to the point where there are no strange rumors surrounding us, but we still maintained a comfortable distance with one another. I enjoyed our time together, and it might have been the second best thing about this high school. Although it used to be the best, now the spot has been occupied by another person. This doesn't change the fact that they still remained important to me. We usually disbanded when Saki and Rina had to go to their club activities. However, before disbanding, while I'm busy chatting with them, or rather, almost as soon as the bell rings, Hajime would always quietly slip away. His ability to disappear was really impressive. In a certain way, some boys, who didn't know Hajime well, looked down on him, thinking he left early because he had no friends. I had overheard such talk before. It was only until the second semester that no one bothered saying such things out loud anymore. However, I knew he left early for his part-time job, or if he didn't have a shift for that day, it was to make it to the supermarket's 4 p.m. sale. And only I know the fact that he is a good cook, a skilled basketball player, a kind person, and that recently, he was getting better at the angles of his kisses and moving my bangs out of the way. At night, we ate dinner together, did our homework, and after taking turns in the bath, we spent time playing games or watching movies. Speaking of things only I knew, Hajime had a lot of interesting games. The first game I completed on my own was one I played when Shiro-chan was still around. It was a grand adventure where the ship a certain red-haired adventurer rode on was wrecked and he ended up on a mysterious island, and you had to solve the island's mysteries. It was the first time I realized that a game's story could make me cry. A game named Wise 8. Lacrimosa of Dana. I also played a game where the main character felt like a Chunabiu and the plot revolved around using D-mails to change word lines or something. I honestly thought that it wouldn't be any good, but it turned out to be an incredibly moving visual novel. Currently, I'm playing a spin-off of that game called Hyokurinri Steins Gate, My Darling's Embrace. Hyokurinri no darling. I used to avoid games, but wanting to try something that my boyfriend liked turned into genuine enjoyment for me. Of course, as a couple, we occasionally kissed and hugged. But beyond that, while we sometimes wanted to do more, we seemed to have an unspoken agreement to keep it at just kissing and hugging. Without any real restrictions stopping us, we instead controlled ourselves, partly because we were a bit scared, but probably also because we wanted to take things slowly. They say men are wolves, but Hajime was a gentleman in that regard. When I teased him about being a coward, he blushed and preferred to be referred to as a gentleman instead, which I honestly found cute. Every time I finished taking a bath, I could feel his gaze linger on me, so I knew it wasn't that he found me unattractive. I feel truly cherished by him. We both knew that once we crossed that line, there would be no turning back. That was how much I loved Hajime, and I was sure he felt the same way about me. Chinatsu, breakfast is almost ready, so wake up. I heard Hajime calling for me. Coming, I replied, trying to make myself look cuter before heading downstairs. Chapter 9. All right, perfect. How do I look? Saying you look good in your plain mode might be rude, but yep, you look very cute. Thanks, Chinatsu. She had checked herself in the bathroom mirror, but now she made a few final adjustments in the hallway mirror before turning to me for reassurance. I looked at her closely and answered honestly. The fact that I could say it without embarrassment was probably thanks to the past week of tempering myself. I don't know how to explain it, but even though I know it's late, I'm starting to really understand what my mom meant when she said that you're the type of person who will be snatched up and taken away by others in the blink of an eye once you go to college or becomes a working adult. What do you mean by that? Nothing, really. Anyway, shall we go? It's our first date. With a light laugh, she opened the door and we stepped outside together. Even in her disguise, with glasses, a different hairstyle, and clothes that hid her figure, Chinatsu still looked incredibly cute. Today was Sunday, and we were going on a date. While an aquarium or a movie would have been nice, we decided on a more practical destination. It's been a while since the last time I went. Even if we don't buy anything, I still like looking at the interior designs. And going out with you like this, Hajime, feels great. As we walked towards the station, Chinatsu's enthusiasm was contagious. I felt my spirits lift as we strolled through the morning winter sunlight. We walked hand in hand, our steps in sync. I was just as happy as she was. Since we're here, why don't we walk through the park? Looking in the direction Chinatsu pointed, I nodded. It felt like a distant memory now, but seeing Chinatsu crouched in that park was the start of everything. Even in winter, the park was unexpectedly filled with parents and children. But that day, the park was empty except for Chinatsu, who was sitting in front of a tree, holding Shiro. It feels like ages ago, but it's only been about 2 months, right? I was just thinking the same thing, right? Maybe this is what it feels like to reminisce about the past. It feels a bit different, but yeah. Maybe when he keeps spending our time like this, grow older and come back here together, we'll understand these feelings better. You always say such things so easily. Huh? Nothing. Come on. Let's go. We need to get there by 10, look around the shop, and have lunch at the restaurant inside. It wasn't that I hadn't heard what Chinatsu said and asked her to repeat. I had just casually expressed what I felt. Could that have been the reason for her reaction? I wondered about it for a moment, but then I felt her grip tighten slightly and her pace quicken, so I decided to keep up without dwelling on it. About 2 stations away from where I lived was a large shop with Scandinavian-style interior designs. I remembered visiting it with my family after we moved, and my parents remarked how it was a great date spot because it had a restaurant and sold hot dogs and ice cream. Back then, I had just looked around with Miho. This time, besides buying some mugs, I planned to get some plates and other items for Chinatsu. It was the reason why I had invited her on a date over the weekend. Hey, yeah? As we got off the train and joined the flow of people heading into the shop, Chinatsu, who transitioned from holding my hand to linking her arm with mine, murmured. The closer contact made me smell her scent and feel the softness of her touch, making me a bit self-conscious. Chinatsu, seemingly unaware of my embarrassment, continued to look around at the families and couples nearby as she continued. Back when my mom suggested it, I was shocked, but spending the past week living together, going to school, and now going on a furniture shopping date like this. Yeah, I realized that ordinary days like this make me feel so happy. It's almost overwhelming. Although Chinatsu said it so casually, it made me realize something important. Yeah, I also feel the same. Come to think of it, I no longer felt anything when I saw families or the streets starting to light up for the holidays. It was so normal that I hadn't noticed. As Christmas approached, the streets that used to make me acutely aware of being alone now felt different. Unlike last year, I didn't need to avert my gaze, either consciously or unconsciously. I could see the beauty of it all and feel like I wasn't alone. Thanks to Chinatsu being by my side, I felt like I had been saved once again. Wow, amazing. Look at this bed and table. Isn't it super stylish? Right. It feels like buying this whole set would make our life luxurious. Of course, we weren't actually buying anything, we were just window shopping. But we walked around the interior design section. It was fun to look at the bedroom setups, dining tables, and rooms fully coordinated with that brand's furniture. Chinatsu seemed to be enjoying it as well. This sofa doesn't want to let me go. Hajime, come on now, don't sprawl on it just because you're wearing a long skirt. There are kids around. We were probably more excited than usual, which is why we didn't notice the familiar voices nearby. Look, Yoko, Dad and the others went somewhere already. We have to go now. Whatever. Those adults can go enjoy themselves. I'm going to enjoy this comfort a bit longer. You can go ahead if you want, Icon. You don't have to stay with me. We don't have that kind of relationship, after all. Sigh, that's not the problem here. But, well, I'll wait here for you. I heard a familiar voice nearby. I turned, thinking about where I might have heard it before. Looking back, I realized that it was such a thoughtless move. Hajime, Is there a problem? Chinatsu, who had been completely immersed with the sofa's comfortness, suddenly sat up from behind and called my name. Huh? That just now definitely sounded like Chinatsu-chan, right? Is that Sate-kun and, In front of me stood the guy responsible for me being called number 2 and a girl from Chinatsu's circle as well as her classmate. They looked at us in shock. Similarly, Chinatsu was also staring at them, equally stunned. Could it be Chinatsu-chan? And then, from Sakurayuko-san's mouth, the name that decided our fate came out, and all I could do was silently watch. Chapter 10. I think you've got the wrong person. Nice to meet you. After a few seconds of silence, Chinatsu said in a clearly strained voice, trying hard to disguise her tone. That sounds so forced. The three of us shouted in unison. Chinatsu looked at me with a "why are you saying that too?" expression, but I didn't think I was in the wrong here. Hajime can recognize me by scent, and Yuko can tell by my voice. I try so hard, but you all figure it out in ways I didn't even consider. You are? It really is you, Chinatsu-chan. They say girls can change their appearance, but this is scary. Even as a girl, I'm impressed. Anyway. Sakurai-san looked at Chinatsu, unable to hide her surprise, then turned her gaze to me, then back again to Chinatsu, before giving a look that seemed to mix amusement and relief, as if she had come to some understanding. Hello, Sakurai-san, and to you too, Sate-kun. Chinatsu still seemed reluctant to fully accept the situation, but it was clear there was no getting out of it, so I greeted the two of them properly. Honestly, the pairing of these two was as much of a mystery as our situation. Sakurayuko-san seemed like a girl who's on the rather quiet side in Chinatsu's circle. Even now, she was dressed in an ordinary hoodie, but the way it emphasized her chest was what made her popular among some boys. However, she wasn't as conspicuous as Chinatsu or Todosaki from the same circle. So seeing her with Satou Hajime-kun, a member of the basketball team, was unexpected. Maybe I just wasn't aware, but at the very least, there hadn't been any rumors about Sate-kun having a girlfriend. Their earlier exchange certainly didn't sound like they were just friends. I looked at Sate-kun again. From my perspective, I had to look up to see his tall frame, with a face so small it made me wonder how many heads tall he was. Along with his perfect facial features, he could be on a magazine cover just by standing there as he blended together with the shop's interior designs. People sometimes gossiped about how well he and Chinatsu suited each other, which I couldn't help but find myself agreeing with. Although, knowing Chinatsu, she would probably be furious if she knew what I thought. Yuko, can we talk for a bit? Sure, honestly. I also wanted to talk with you about the same thing for a bit. All right, where should we go? Obviously, we can't talk about it here. There's a drinks corner a bit further on. We'll talk there. Sate. Oh right, both of you have the same name. Arg, whatever. I can, sorry, but can you contact Dad and the others? Chinatsu and Sakurai-san quickly started making plans, as the latter looked at Satou Hajime-kun, trying to refer to him as Sate, but quickly gave up as she looked at me and referred to him as A-kun instead. That must have been her usual way of addressing him. Sate-kun nodded and took out his phone as he started his call. Meanwhile, Chinatsu and Sakurai-san weaved through the crowd at a remarkable speed, heading toward the drinks corner. What do I do in this situation? I found myself standing awkwardly in the sofa section, feeling like I was caught in an odd twist of fate, while Sate-kun was on the phone. This continued until he finished his call and gave me a similarly awkward smile. Even though we both wore the same troubled expression, there was a certain charm in his that mine lacked. For now, should we follow them? Right. I guess they're over there. We walked together, not too close but not too far apart, maintaining an awkward distance. It felt like we both didn't know what to say, so we stayed silent. I had never actually had a proper conversation with him, despite sharing the same name and being in the same year. I had seen him many times, though. He consistently ranked at the top in academics, and he was so skilled in everything on top of his striking appearance, which made him very popular. That said, the people who called me number 2 were mostly those who had no real connection to him. They simply picked it up from their friends or used it unconsciously. So, I had no idea what he really thought of me, nor did I know much about him as a person. Sate, you know. So when he called out to me as we neared the drink corner, I was slow to react. Huh? Well, I mean, look, when someone has the same surname, we usually use first names to avoid confusion, right? But since we also have the same first name, calling you Hajime just feels a bit off. Haha. It's such a pain, right? He laughed and scratched his head, his smile crinkling. To begin with, our first names aren't the issue, but the fact that the surname Sate is too common. Haha, true. Feeling the awkwardness between us lighten, I replied. Hearing my words, Sate-kun laughed as he continued. So, are you and Minamino-san dating? He was direct. And if we are? I took a moment to answer, feeling a bit scared. It came out as a question, perhaps reflecting a hint of insecurities that I felt, as if I was challenging any objection he might have. Words like, "That's unexpected," or "You don't suit each other." I see. That's great. I'm quite tight-lipped, so don't worry. I won't tell anyone if you're keeping it a secret. Eh? I ended up making such a weird voice. I was taken aback. He seemed genuinely pleased that we were together, and I couldn't understand why. Listen, I don't mean to offend you, but you know, because of me, people have been calling you with a weird name, right? Sate-kun seemed to notice the strange expression on my face and my voice as he scratched his head again. The number 2 thing. Honestly, having the same name in the same grade would have made us stand out either way, so I don't mind. I've been called worse, so it's not that bad in comparison. That, in itself, is rather concerning. But, you know, Sate, you never really get angry about those things, and you always leave school right after classes. So, how do I put this? It might sound arrogant or weird, but I can't find any other words than this, and I don't like it. But, I was kind of worried that maybe I was the reason why school became boring for you. But then, who am I to think that way, right? And if I suddenly started talking to you, it might just draw more unwanted attention. Wait, was I being rude? Sorry. No, that's not it. It was unexpected. I never imagined Sate-kun thought about things that way, especially since we barely have any connection other than our names. And, you're actually a really good guy, aren't you? Sate-kun. Haha. What's with that impression? Well, at least I try to be. Sate-kun laughed as he said as such. At the very least, it was clear to me that he had no hidden motives. Simply put, he was an exceptionally good guy. Not only is he academically gifted, he is also athletically talented, and good-looking. In fact, with all these qualities, it was hard to imagine any reason for him to have a bad personality. I started to think that I might have lost my ability to judge people properly, thanks to Kanezaki, and thought that I needed some reevaluation. That's why, seeing you out here with your girlfriend, having a date outside of school and experiencing both of your youth, I realized I was being an idiot for worrying, and I just feel glad. Then, he flashed a handsome and refreshing smile. Unlike Chinatsu's, his smile had a certain aura about it. So bright. I'm getting dizzy. Sometimes, other people say the same thing too. What does it mean? Haha, I figured. Don't worry about it, it's just how the others perceive you. By the way, is it the same for you guys too? Like, are you and Sakurai-san dating? Since the conversation had taken this turn, I couldn't resist asking. Chinatsu was likely having her own talk, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to satisfy my curiosity. More than anything, Sate-kun turned out to be such a great guy, so I couldn't help but feel curious about him. No, we're not like that. For the first time, Sate-kun seemed a bit hesitant. Did I ask something I shouldn't have? Not that I'm asking you for a trade-off for asking me earlier, but I'm also tight-lipped. Besides, I don't have many people to talk to other than Chinatsu, Yoko and I. Childhood friends or something like that. I wasn't very good at lying. Whenever I tried to, Chinatsu could always tell. And, it looked like Sate-kun wasn't very good at it either. Chapter 11. A childhood friend with close family ties and an ex-boyfriend. Chinatsu accidentally shouted, causing Yoko to hurriedly cover her mouth with a flushed face, worried about the surrounding attention. Chinatsu, who had spoken impulsively, also came to her senses as she quickly bowed her head, apologizing to the people around them. I mean, isn't that too many attributes? That's... Wait, you actually use terms like attributes, Chinatsu-chan? That's unexpected. Yuko curiously responded to the few words Chinatsu had muttered. The latter had been clearly influenced by Hajime's games. I mean, Hajime always explained about character attributes like the pure and innocent masculine shrine maiden, the tsundere genius beauty, and the warm and fluffy childhood friend to me. But anyway, setting that aside, I see. That's rather... I'm sorry, Chinatsu-chan. I just couldn't bring it up. Although Chinatsu thought she had far more secrets, seeing Yuko apologize with a guilty look made her feel like something inside her was being scraped away. At the same time, she understood why it was hard for her to talk about it. Looking at Saki's state, it's understandable. Yeah, to begin with, I wasn't trying to hide our relationship on purpose, but, you know, it felt weird for me to just suddenly say, why don't I introduce you to A-kun? And supporting her directly was also, I don't know, impossible or something. It's okay, I understand. Todo Saki was a very straightforward and nice girl. However, as their friend, they had to add that this applied only when her first love and jealousy weren't involved. What's more is that the person she was in love with was none other than Satou-kun. In the first place, how would Yuka feel if a friend who had a crush on her ex-boyfriend complained about other girls approaching him and constantly talked about how cool he was in every way? Chinatsu mused as she swore in her heart to be more open-minded with supporting her friends. Still, Yuko and that Satou-kun being in a relationship, huh? Don't forget the ex part. I mean, when we were in middle school and started showing interest in the opposite sex, we were just the ones closest to each other. After all, we spent time together from kindergarten to elementary school, and then, during puberty, we were just conveniently close. Though, we broke up right after graduating middle school and went back to being childhood friends. Is going back to being childhood friends even possible? Surprisingly, yes. Our parents knew about our relationship and breakup, and it wasn't like we broke up because we hated each other, Yuka firmly stated, responding to Chinatsu's question. The latter, still finding that fact hard to believe, went speechless. That aside, Chinatsu-chan, I always thought you were the type who avoided getting too deeply involved with people, as I thought, you noticed? Well, yeah, I think a few others might have too. But since you never badmouthed anyone, I don't think you left a bad impression. Plus, those who noticed might, you know, think that something might have happened to you back in middle school or something. You're also good at maintaining distance. And no, we thought that you didn't actually dislike us. Yeah, sorry, and thank you. That's why, though it's surprising you're dating someone, I am also relieved at the same time. And, you guys are dating, right? There's no way you guys aren't dating with how affectionately you called him, right? You even disguised yourself just to go on a date. Knowing that Yuko's words were implying such, Chinatsu couldn't help but nod shyly. It was the first time she had acknowledged Hajime as her boyfriend to someone her age, and it made her face flush. Seeing this, Yuko fanned herself with her hand and remarked, "The Chinatsu-chan has the face of a woman in love." Hey, stop saying weird things. Here, use this hand mirror. Stop it, geez. Is it really that obvious? Yep, it's that obvious. If anything, I'm amazed by how you can hide it at school. When I put on my uniform and go to school, I just feel like I'm equipped with stronger defenses, Chinatsu said as she made a shameful face at Yuko. And then, ahahaha. They laughed together, looking at each other. For now, let's keep today's conversation between us, okay? No objections. And someday, I'd like to hear the story of how you and Hajime got together. I mean, a hidden relationship between an inconspicuous guy and a popular girl in the school. Yep, I totally support it. Why you support it? And you want to hear our story? Then, I'd like to hear about yours too. Childhood friend romance are kinda my thing. Geez, I suppose a give and take is necessary. Let's do this another time, then. Yeah, It looks like they're here now anyway. As their conversation concluded, Hajime and Sate-kun, who seemed to be chatting amicably, walked towards them. Crap. I was so focused on talking to Yuko that I forgot about the Sate-kun and Hajime combo. But they seem to be getting along. Aikun is like a social monster, so he easily gets along with anyone, though seeing him hit it off with Sate-kun might be because there's more to him than just that. Huh? What do you mean by that? And who's Aikun? First of all, Aikun, or rather, Sate-kun, is my childhood friend. I used to call him Hajime-chan in elementary. Back then, he wasn't good at studying or sports. Heck, he was even so small. The boys in his class apparently bullied him for sharing a nickname with an anime protagonist. So I settled with calling him Aikun, derived from Ichi. Now, he's become so perfect, though, to the point that it makes me feel a bit suffocated. Yuko, it's nothing. Anyway, I'll stop here. Let's continue it next time. Chinatsu-chan, you can go and flirt as much as you want with your hidden date with Sate-kun. Kidding. All right. Aikun, we're done talking. Let's go join Dad and the others. It's almost time for lunch, anyway. For a moment, Yuka flashed a sad expression. Seeing her, Chinatsu almost wanted to step in, but immediately shook off the thought as she watched Yuko run off to Sate-kun. The way they acted to one another made them seem very close, but there seemed to be a hidden distance behind their expressions. A childhood friend, ex-boyfriend, and now back to being childhood friends. I wonder how they feel being together even today, Chinatsu murmured, her words fading into the air. Section. Anyway, we wrapped up our talk and decided to keep everything a secret. Make sure you do too, okay? Got it. Thanks. Hajime nodded in understanding and thanked Chinatsu. Don't thank me, since it's not just for us. They seem to have a complicated relationship too. Plus, we have an issue with our girl group too. Remembering Yuko's earlier expression, Chinatsu sighed, prompting Hajime to speak with a slightly complicated face. Sate-kun, what's up? You two seem to be getting along well, which surprised me since I didn't think you interacted much. From Chinatsu's perspective, Hajime and Sate-kun seemed to be having a friendly conversation. Although she thought they wouldn't interact much due to being compared often, she was glad they were getting along. Hajime was good with people, partly because of his job and past experiences dealing with adults. Hajime certainly looked friendly and kind, but Chinatsu knew better than anyone that he didn't easily open up to strangers. You know, I realized how scary prejudice can be. Prejudice? Yeah, I used to avoid people who were popular in our school, but Sate-kun, like you, Chinatsu, turned out to be a nice person. Today made me realize that you never really know someone until you talk to them. Also, I don't know, but he asked if I was injured, like my leg or shoulder. Chinatsu tilted her head in confusion and asked, Why? I wonder. I was just about to ask him why when Sakurai-san came over, and they had to leave. Maybe because of the rumor that I quit basketball due to an injury or something? But it didn't seem like he was trying to confirm that rumor either. Well, I hope you'll get to talk to him more at school or something. Hajime mentioned it with slight concern, but Chinatsu thought that as long as they were friendly, it was fine. Although the new information that Yuko and Sate-kun were childhood friends and exes was shocking, she thought that perhaps it was just another layer to their already complicated relationship. Yeah, that'd be nice. Though, with our names, I doubt Sate-kun and I will ever be in the same class. True. That'd be confusing when searching for your student number, not to mention during attendance. They even had to apparently include our class names next to our full names on the bulletin board when the grades were posted to avoid confusion, since it used to be just our names. Really? Chatting about such trivial things, Chinatsu and Hajime returned to their original plan, enjoying their first date. Despite a few incidents, they had a wonderful day. Chapter 12. After that incident, neither Chinatsu nor I, nor even Sakurai-san or Sate-kun, spoke of it again. Even on the day of the closing ceremony, no rumors had spread. Occasionally, I would notice Sakurai-san glancing meaningfully at Chinatsu when she was on her phone, or Sate-kun smiling at us when we passed each other in the hallway. It was a relief. Had any rumors started, Both Chinatsu and I might have developed trust issues. Hey, you have plans over the winter break? Though I usually left as soon as the bell rang, today was a half day, so I wasn't in a rush. I stayed in my seat to organize my belongings. During this time, I overheard the voices of Chinatsu and her group. Perhaps I was more aware of conversations involving Chinatsu, so their voices naturally caught my attention. Yeah, my mom's getting out of the hospital, so I figured I'd love to go somewhere and hang out. I know you guys have club activities, so I'll adjust my schedule to yours. I want to go karaoke and go shopping. What should we do on Christmas though? I found myself reacting slightly to the mention of Christmas. It would be our first Christmas as a couple, and actually our first romantic holiday event. But we hadn't made any plans yet because we were waiting on the results of Suzuka-san's medical tests to confirm her discharge date. We decided to plan something together after her discharge, as our living arrangements made any attempts of giving the other surprises difficult. I had looked into reservations, but most places were booked. I thought maybe we could have a serious go at cooking a meal together. As for a gift, I hadn't decided yet. Choosing a present for someone who would be happy with anything made it even harder to decide. I might have plans for Christmas. Yep. I figured you'd say that, Chinatsu. Back when you mentioned you had someone special, it meant you have a boyfriend, right? What's he like? Will you introduce him to us? Todo-san asked while lowering her voice a bit. However, I heard her clearly because I had a good hearing. I remember Chinatsu telling me that she had mentioned having someone important to her to a friend, without specifying who, to avoid starting rumors. I'd like to introduce him if given a chance, but he's shy, and we just want to be alone for now. I'll introduce him properly when the time is right, so please don't pry too much. Now, Saki-chan. Rina-chan and I aren't available that day either since she had plans for a Christmas party already, and my family has plans too. Let's just do something before or after Christmas, or maybe around New Year. Saki-chan, when's your club practice break? Sakurai-san spoke over Chinatsu's words, and Hojo and Rina nodded in agreement. Their discussion about plans for the holidays was getting lively as they began deciding when and where to do what. I sent Chinatsu a message asking her to let me know if she needed lunch and then got up from my seat. Chinatsu messaged that she would have lunch with her friends and came back in the evening. I spent the day working on my computer and searching on the net for stuff, but a moment later, I was holding my phone on the other hand while thinking of a reply. I'm home. Sorry, I ended up talking a lot with them and came back late. I checked my messages. Apparently, Mom's results were good, and she's getting discharged tomorrow morning. Welcome back, Chinatsu. Yeah, I got a message too. Your mom thanked me for looking after you and invited me to celebrate her recovery. Right. It seemed already normal for my mom to contact you directly. She didn't write anything unnecessary, did she? Let me see. Just your messages with my mum. Seeing my usual inability to lie or hide things, Chinatsu reached out her hand. After a moment of hesitation, I gave into the pressure and opened the message from Suzuka-san, then handed my phone to her. Suzuka, thank you for taking care of Chinatsu. Thanks to you, I'm getting discharged safely. Hajime, congratulations. This calls for a celebration for your recovery, then. Suzuka, thanks. I have to go back to work the day after tomorrow, so how about the three of us go out to eat somewhere tomorrow? I know this doesn't make up for everything, but I'd like to treat you to something delicious. It's been a while since I've had anything other than hospital food. Hajime, thank you. I'll gladly accept. Suzuka, by the way, how's living together? My daughter hasn't grown tired of you yet, has she? Suzuka, I want to ask more, but considering tonight is your last night living together, I shouldn't intrude too much. Suzuka, by the way, what are your plans for Christmas? If you need, I can stay at the office. Actually, I have a lot of work piled up, so maybe I should let you two keep living together for a bit longer. While I was still wondering how to reply, Suzuka-san had already sent quite a few messages. Chinatsu, with a slightly exasperated look in her eyes, said, I'll just have a little chat on the phone, and went upstairs. Despite everything that had happened, It was very heartening to see their mother-daughter relationship improving. Later that evening, Chinatsu and I sat in front of the computer, discussing Christmas and winter break plans. Actually, I remembered something a while ago and looked it up, I said as I showed Chinatsu a few emails and websites. Some of these places somehow look incredibly fancy. I've honestly never been to such high-end places before. Same. They require formal attire, so it's just a reference. Remember when I mentioned things like stocks when I was talking about my uncle? From him, a few shareholder perks for dinner courses exclusive around this season arrived. I thought, since we have them, we might as well use them. Really? Where? I want to see. Here. I contacted them, and apparently, someone had cancelled their reservation. They said we could book the course at the shareholder discount rate if we want. Normally, this kind of thing should be left as a surprise and smoothly escort you, but considering the dress code and the location being in the downtown area, I wanted to decide together with you, including other plans. My voice trailed off as I spoke. Chinatsu went silent, so I turned to see her reaction, but she suddenly hugged me from behind, resting her head on my neck. The soft sensation against my back made me nervous. Chinatsu. When I said that, Chinatsu rubbed her forehead against my neck and said, "It makes me feel a little uneasy, you know." Her voice had a slight hint of affection, so it assured me that my Christmas suggestion hadn't upset her. "I feel like you said something similar before. It's because you're making me feel very happy. I was worried that if we started living together so soon after dating, you might hate me if I showed you my weird sides. But we've been living together so smoothly, or rather it's actually been very comforting." Yeah, Yuko might have found out about us, but knowing they had their own circumstances too, I started thinking that we were on the same boat. And honestly, it made me feel a bit more at ease. Yeah, that's why. What do you call it? Backlash. I sometimes worry that maybe bad things will happen to balance out the happiness. Chinatsu's grip tightened, as if she were afraid I might disappear. I gently reached back to pat her head. "I understand why you might feel that way. But, think about it. Maybe the happiness we're feeling right now is making up for our bad past. So, you don't need to worry about it, I'm sure." "Yeah, thanks." "You're right. Positive thinking. Positive thinking." Then, as if pulling herself together, she stood up and moved her chair next to mine, so that we were sitting close together, looking at the screen. While I was busy typing in the reservation details, Chinatsu suddenly murmured, "I just thought of this suddenly, but speaking of bad things, we haven't had a fight yet, right? Do you want to?" "Not really, but it's hard to imagine. For example, what would you do if you got really mad at me? I just can't picture it." "I mean, I can see myself being selfish, but I can't imagine you getting angry." "Let's see. Let's say your game's save date is on my console. That's something that would definitely hurt. I'd cry if you deleted it." "Instead of deleting it, maybe I'd just advance one chapter ahead." "That's even worse. Now I really don't want to have a fight with you." "Haha, let's just get along well, alright?" As we made such an exchange, we finalized our plans for Christmas. During the day, we'd go shopping at places Chinatsu wanted to visit, then we'd head to a spot with beautiful Christmas lights, a place I had found when I searched for first Christmas date spots with girlfriend, which Chinatsu had teased me when she saw my search history. Finally, we'd have a dinner course at the hotel I mentioned earlier. It was an ambitious plan. I felt both nervous and excited since we made the plans together. It was my first time spending such a Christmas, and I was sure Chinatsu felt the same. We tried to hold on to this indescribable happiness, hoping it wouldn't fade away. We didn't do anything special and spent the day as we normally would. Thus, the last night of our short cohabitation passed peacefully. Chapter 13. The next day, Suzuka-san was discharged from the hospital and treated us to high-class sushi. I had heard from Chinatsu that Suzuka-san was a big sushi lover, and since both Chinatsu and I also loved sushi, it was an easy decision, especially since hospital food didn't include sushi. During the discharge procedures and while heading out to eat, Suzuka-san and Chinatsu kept bickering affectionately. Knowing their original relationship, I felt very happy. Above all, I was delighted that both Suzuka-san and Chinatsu treated it as perfectly normal for me to be with them. The day after that, Suzuka-san tried to dive back into work immediately but was scolded by her subordinates for rushing back too soon and was told to go home early. Initially, I thought she had become a workaholic due to her divorce issues, but it seemed she had always been a workaholic. Despite Suzuka-san teasing Chinatsu, saying she could extend her stay, Chinatsu went back home. Of course, I made sure everything was set up so she could come over anytime and gave her a spare key. Then, the winter break started, unexpectedly. During that period, we didn't meet up until the scheduled day. Since I had adjusted my work schedule to avoid working during Christmas and New Year's, I focused on my part-time job, prepping during the day. Chinatsu, catching up on missed time with her friends, also didn't see me much. Above all, it was nice to see that Chinatsu could have more conversations with Suzuka-san, who had been only focused on her work ever since her daughter entered high school. She would always come home early from work, spend family time together, and cook dinner. Suzuka-san joked about putting Chinatsu through bridal training, while Chinatsu was determined to definitely cook the next time she stayed over. Receiving these simultaneous messages left me at a loss for how to respond. Despite not seeing each other for a few days, I didn't feel as lonely as I expected. This might be because Chinatsu frequently messaged and called me, and living together for about 10 days had reassured both of us. I was now her boyfriend, and she was my girlfriend. That fact will never change. And then, Christmas Eve arrived. It's so crowded, Chinatsu said, clinging to my arm to avoid us from getting separated. We were both dressed a bit more stylishly today, aiming for a college student vibe. Or at least, that's what Chinatsu said as she coordinated the outfits. In fact, the clothes I was wearing were also selected by her. We met at the station, and even though my vocabulary was limited as I commented on her outfit, she still smiled cheerfully without getting upset. By the way, when Chinatsu saw my search history while we were making plans, she discovered that I had been searching for presents. From then on, I vowed to clear my history. I was struggling to decide too, but it made me happy that you were also putting in the effort. So, instead of surprises and all that, why don't we pick something together this time? That's honestly a relief. But are you sure? Of course. As you know, we've been through a lot, from Mom's situation, becoming lovers after, to having to live together. It would be surprising if we still had the energy to surprise each other, right? Isn't it because you checked my search history while I went to the toilet? No, look, when I clicked the mouse, the recent searches popped up, and there was a see more link. I couldn't help but wonder if there might be some interesting or even lewd things in the search history that would reveal more about my boyfriend's hobbies. That's just a girl's curiosity, you know. And what would you do if you found something? I hadn't thought that far, but seeing things like first Christmas date spots with girlfriend or thoughtful first gift ideas, it made me feel really loved. Yeah, I guess that's why girlfriends check their boyfriend's search history, to feel loved. I'm pretty sure you're not completely right with the last sentence, and it's embarrassing, so please stop. As a result of that conversation, we ended up wandering around a Christmas-themed shopping mall in the city, looking for presents among other things. Isn't this cute? Chinatsu stopped at a small shop nestled among a row of accessory stores. In front of the shop, a pair of key cases with small red and blue teddy bears caught her eye. Just as Chinatsu had a key to my place, I also had a key to hers, given to me by Suzuka-san. This is a token of my trust and expectations, Suzuka-san said. Her words continued with, I trust you, and I hope you'll stay with Chinatsu, which made me feel a bit embarrassed. But looking at the two different keys side by side, I understood why Chinatsu had once said she felt a little sad returning my spare key. Because of this, the pair of key cases seemed like the perfect gifts for our first Christmas together. Maybe I should get a part-time job too, Chinatsu mused after we bought and attached the key cases. Really? I didn't think you were short on money. Yeah, my mum gave me plenty to make sure I wouldn't struggle, and I get an allowance too. I bought this with my allowance, but you bought yours with money you earned yourself. And you're paying for dinner later too. I'm genuinely happy about it, but I don't like feeling like I'm just taking advantage of you. Apparently, she didn't want to always rely on me just because I earned more. Despite how much she could lean on me at times, it was clear that Chinatsu also wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. This was part of her charm that wasn't immediately obvious from just looking at her. That's true. I don't really mind you relying on me, but learning and experiencing how society works through working part-time could be beneficial. I learned a lot from mine. I see. Any recommendations? Not really. But I'd prefer if you avoided working at an izakaya or a convenience store. Eh? Why? Well, if you were a waitress or a clerk, you'd probably get hit on. Or rather, I bet I sounded restrictive and gross just now, right? Forget I said anything. Don't mind me. You can do whatever job you want to do, Chinatsu. I was a bit flustered, my face turning red. I expected her to tease me again, but Chinatsu remained silent. I glanced at her, worried that she might be put off by my sudden possessiveness. You're banned from saying those things in public, she said softly. When I gave her a puzzled look, she tightened her grip on my left arm, and the soft sensation that I felt grew stronger. Rather than being restrictive, it's more like you want to keep me all to yourself, and that makes me really happy. You don't usually say things like that, Hajime, and I don't like how I can't openly show you how happy it makes me when you say it here in public, so it's unfair. That's why it's banned. I was momentarily speechless. In this situation, I wondered who was really being unfair. You're the one who's unfair sometimes, Chinatsu, I thought to myself. Chapter 14. And so, we spent the rest of the day having fun. As the sun began to set, we decided to take a break before heading to our next destination and went to separate restrooms. Naturally, I finished first and joined the other men waiting for their partners. However, as the other men came and went, Chinatsu still hadn't come out. Worried, I sent her a message, but it remained unread. Feeling uneasy, I was about to call her when I saw her emerge from the restroom. Relief washed over me, but her expression made it clear something was wrong. It was also evident that she was unsure whether to tell me. I also hesitated for a bit. Chinatsu had been looking forward to today, and so had I. Should I pretend not to notice or ask her directly? My hesitation lasted only a moment, since we were both excited about today. If there was something she found hard to bring up, I should be the one to ask instead. Chinatsu, did something happen? At my words, Chinatsu looked at me with tear-filled eyes, approached me quietly, and whispered, "What should I do?" I took her hand, knowing the warmth of touch could be comforting. Slowly, I said, "It's okay, don't worry about me or whatever plans we had next. Just tell me what you're feeling and what you found out." Chinatsu threw herself into my arms. Maybe because it was the season for couples, no one paid us any mind. "Do you want to sit and talk somewhere? Or should we go home? It'll be fine. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Hajime. It's our first Christmas together, and Chinatsu trembled, apologizing through her tears. I gently tried to calm her. "It's okay." At those words, Chinatsu seemed to relax a bit, leaning more into me. She pressed her face into my chest and began to speak. "Just now, I got a message from my female cousin. They knew about my family's situation. Of course, but they said there was something I should know." I silently embraced her, and she continued, clutching my back. "My grandmother. She's apparently not gonna make it anymore. She was originally hospitalized, but she was discharged this morning. Not because she recovered, but to spend her final days at home. They said she called my name in her sleep, so they thought I should know that." I'd heard of cases where patients were discharged because there was nothing more the hospital could do. "And she's my grandmother on my dad's side. She lives in Nagano Prefecture. I don't see my grandparents on mom's side much because they're in Hokkaido, but I used to spend every summer with my grandmother in Nagano. I love her, but I couldn't visit last year because of exams, and this year, visiting her is not that easy because of the situation." I could only nod. It made sense. With her father divorced, it would be hard to visit his side of the family. Even if her relationship with her grandmother was good, Suzuka-san wouldn't be inclined to go, and Chinatsu wouldn't be able to convince her to take her there either. The last time I visited was in my second year of middle school. I was rebellious then, got irritated and argued with grandmother over something stupid. I said some awful things and left it at that. What should I do? Hajime? I don't want to leave it like this. I'm really sorry, but I don't think I can enjoy Christmas like this. I tried to put on a smile in the bathroom, but I just couldn't. Chinatsu said, her emotions overflowing as I watched her tears start streaming down her face. I glanced at the clock. Although it looked like the sun was about to set, it was only just after 5 p.m., and the early winter sunset made it seem later than it was. Chinatsu, where exactly in Nagano does your grandmother live? I asked her as she cried. I already knew what I needed to do. After all, my girlfriend was in tears. Let's go see her. If she was discharged this morning, we still have time, right? But we already made a reservation at the hotel. And we were really looking forward to it. Plus, Chinatsu was still hesitant. Why don't we go together and apologize for canceling? Besides, I plan to spend Christmas with you next year and the year after that. How about you, Chinatsu? Yeah, I want to spend it with you, too. Then let's go. Today isn't a one-time special day, it's just one of the many days we'll be spending together. Let's prioritize what needs to be done now. I'll take you to your grandmother. I was quite sure that what I needed to do wasn't to take her to a Christmas dinner or to see the Christmas lights. It was taking this kind girl, who couldn't bring herself to express her wish for various reasons, to see her grandmother who she longed to see again. If I remember correctly, she lives in Matsumoto City, around a place called, Asama Onsen. But this is just so sudden, plus, the money, don't worry. We can just take the Azusa Limited Express directly, and I'll cover the costs. As for where we'll stay, well, let's figure it out later. We should also let Suzuka-san know in case. So yeah, let's go together, alright? With that, I released Chinatsu from my embrace and took her hand. She looked at my hand, then nodded slightly. Chapter 15. The cold was more than just chilly. It was almost painful. That was our first impression when we stepped off the train at Matsumoto Station. Looking around, we could see the view of the townscape stretched out in between mountains. During the train ride, Chinatsu stayed in touch with both her cousin and her mother, while I avoided disturbing her as she looked like she had a lot on her mind. Since I had nothing to do, I bought drinks and bento boxes. Before doing some quick research about our destination, despite hearing it would be cold, experiencing it firsthand was completely different. The air was much clearer than in our city. The breath we inhaled was shockingly cold, and the breath we exhaled was startlingly white. My bare, ungloved hands felt more pain than cold. The station staff warned us that it would be especially chilly today and tomorrow and suggested dressing warmer if we were sightseeing. They said grandmother is sleeping now. My cousin is picking us up at the station with her car, and she said you could stay with us. She's apparently waiting around the traffic circle, so follow me. About that, I think I'll stay somewhere else. When I said what I had been thinking, Chinatsu looked surprised and then anxious. Why? I smiled to reassure her and shared what went on my mind when we were still on the train. I'm your boyfriend, but to your relatives, I'm a complete stranger. Yes, that's true, but don't worry. I'm not saying that because I don't want to go to a place with people I don't know. Look, Chinatsu, you're about to say a very important goodbye to your grandmother, right? And you don't want your grandmother's last memory of you to be an argument from some time ago. So you're going there to properly convey those feelings, right? Yeah, I also heard that your relatives are waiting, hoping for your grandmother to wake up and be able to talk even for just a bit. That's true, but I'll properly introduce you, and you're polite, so I'm sure. Yes, but hear me out. I'm confident that you love me a lot, Chinatsu. And because of that, if I go there with you, you'll naturally want to stand between me and your relatives, like you just said, right? That's right. Probably. As I continued speaking, Chinatsu started to listen more intently. My words began to calm her anxious and worried heart. Seeing this, I continued. I'm sure your relatives understand that even with your parents' current situation, you came because your grandmother is important to you, but it's still a difficult time for them, right? Knowing that they might have someone who was close to them pass away, they won't have the energy to deal with me, your boyfriend, too. Of course, if there's a chance later, I'd like to introduce myself, but now isn't the right time. No matter what I do, I won't be able to share the same grief as you, Chinatsu. And, in the moment of saying goodbye to someone important, an outsider like me shouldn't be there. Especially when they had no other option but to let her spend her final moments at home. Someone like me, who is clearly an outsider, shouldn't be there. But, Hajime, it's okay. I'll stay nearby and be ready if you need me. I won't make stupid mistakes like letting my phone die either. And, I won't leave you alone. Go on, Chinatsu, I said, gently pushing her forward. If her cousin was already here to pick her up, it was best to go quickly. I already knew there would likely be vacancies in the single rooms at the business hotel near the station before we went off the train anyway. I feel a bit lonely, but I think I understand. Thank you. I'll be calling you soon. Waving to Chinatsu as she headed toward the waiting cars, I walked through the unfamiliar city, guided by my map app, towards my temporary lodging section. It's been so long, Chinatsu-chan. Wow, you're in high school now? I can't believe you've turned into such a beauty. It's been a while, Akin. Thanks for picking me up. I heard you got your license. Sitting in the passenger seat, Chinatsu talked with her cousin, Minamino Akane. She was 4 years older than Chinatsu, and was attending a national university here in their hometown of Nagano. Yeah, winter roads are too icy for scooters or bikes. And with all the hills, you really need a car around here. But what about your boyfriend? He came all the way here with you, right? Suzuka-san mentioned him too, and I was curious. As Akane drove skillfully, Chinatsu relayed what Hajime had said earlier. Then, Akane sighed in surprise. For real? How do I put this? But high schoolers these days are. No. It's probably just your boyfriend that's unusual, Chinatsu-chan. Is he? Sure. He brought me here in the middle of our date, but to me, it's something that makes me really happy. I mean, Suzuka-san did talk about him for a bit, and it's really like what she said. Also, saying unusual was just my poor choice of words. But to sum it up, he's simply impressive. Plus, if your boyfriend had really come together with you, it might have created an awkward atmosphere for everyone, and it might have gone the way he said earlier. Or at least, that's what I think. That's why I came to pick you up instead of my parents, because I'm closer to your age. Really? Chinatsu honestly didn't quite understand what Hajime meant. However, she knew that Hajime had thought deeply about her feelings and understood his words enough to follow his suggestion. Still, she felt guilty for leaving him alone after he had come all the way with her. So, when Akane muttered with a complicated expression, Chinatsu couldn't help but voice her slight confusion. Say, Chinatsu, has your boyfriend lost someone important to him before? Yes, his parents and little sister in an accident. Chinatsu was surprised by Akane's sudden, direct question. However, starting her words with a note that it wasn't something she should say openly, Chinatsu answered. Akane nodded and muttered, I see. I should probably mention this a bit to my parents. She then skillfully maneuvered the car from the main road into a narrow alley. As they approached a very familiar steep slope to Chinatsu, Akane murmured, You've found a good boyfriend, Chinatsu-chan. Chinatsu felt happy and proud after hearing that. At the same time, she felt a bit frustrated, as if she hadn't yet fully caught up to understanding what Hajime had truly meant. Yeah, however, she could confidently respond and agree to those words. Chapter 16. The next morning, I woke up to an unfamiliar sensation. Looking around, I remembered that I wasn't at home. Afterward, I had a meal at a Judon restaurant, the kind you find in any prefecture, and where I felt comfortable dining alone. The business hotel that I had booked for the night using an app also had a surprisingly comfortable bed, so I had quite a good night's sleep. I had received quite a few messages from Chinatsu expressing her gratitude, accompanied by a bunch of sweet, slightly embarrassing stickers. Even though I had told her I was staying nearby, It was my first time in this city and I had no idea how to navigate around it. However, since it was a castle town, I thought I might as well explore a bit. I hoped Chinatsu could make up with her grandmother. I don't know what kind of grandmother she was or what kind of relatives they were, but I knew that leaving things on a bad note was never good. I informed the hotel front desk that I was going out and stepped into the convenience store right in front. Being a tourist spot, the store's magazine section had various travel magazines and local food recommendations. While flipping through them, I picked up a bottled drink and headed to the counter. On the way, I saw a pudding in the sweets section, and a memory came flooding back. Why did you eat the pudding I was saving? Wasn't that mine? No, Anne. You idiot. You can't even tell the difference between the taste of a 100 yen pudding and a 300 yen pudding, and you ate one that I wanted to save for later. You jerk, go die. It was just our usual argument over an ordinary day. Sometimes I got mad, and sometimes she did, and at that moment, I thought it was ridiculous to argue over something as trivial as pudding. And of course, neither I nor my hoe ever imagined that that would be our last conversation. Who knew you'd be the one to go after saying something like that? It was only recently that I began to recall memories like these at random moments. It wasn't just because of this, but when I saw Chinatsu crying yesterday, I felt I had to take her here with me. Leaving things unresolved after an argument, especially when the other person is gone, leaves a very bitter aftertaste. Truly. Even so, I had to admit, my actions had been pretty impulsive. That aside, what should I do today? Though I said I might explore a bit since I'm new around this town, there's only a Parco Mall and family restaurants around here. I might just wander here and there, but I really don't know where to start, I muttered to myself, remembering the recommended spots from the magazine as I walked. Luckily, I didn't have any shifts left this year, although I had some shifts scheduled for the beginning of the new year. Many university students had taken over during the holidays, so I was free. I had enough money and no reason to head back early. I could kill time at a nearby manga cafe, but that also felt like a waste. Chinatsu. Good morning, Hajime. Thanks again for yesterday, Hajime. Morning. How's your grandmother, Chinatsu? She woke up for a moment this morning but is resting again. Chinatsu, you see, I told my cousin, my aunt, and my uncle about you, and they were all praising you. It made me really happy, Hajime. I'm worried you might have exaggerated my qualities. Chinatsu, I just told them exactly how you are, Chinatsu. And then, they said they appreciated how considerate you were and that you were welcome to come if you needed anything. Hajime, thanks. But I've got plenty of ways to kill time, and I might do some sightseeing depending on the circumstances. I'll probably scout out some places we can visit for when we can meet up too. So, don't worry about me, Hajime. I hope you can have a good talk with your grandmother later. Chinatsu messaged me, and we exchanged a few texts. I had been wandering around aimlessly, but when I told her that I was going to scout out places for her, it occurred to me that it might actually be a good idea. For now, maybe I should check out the castle. This might have been the first time I had so much unstructured time. Usually, I was busy with work, school, or basketball. Even during my free time, I was occupied with reading, gaming, or watching anime. I always felt pressed for time at home. Here, I had nothing to do and no particular destination, but I had time. Perhaps this was what people meant by a luxurious use of time. The path to Matsumoto Castle was lined with buildings reminiscent of its history as a castle town. There were stone monuments and other markers, giving me ample opportunities to look things up on my phone as I walked leisurely. When I arrived, the castle was hosting a snow festival. I was curious about the inside, but since it would run until the new year, I decided to save that experience for when I could visit with Chinatsu. So, I only viewed the castle from the outside. Up close, the castle looked quite miniature, but the snow-covered moat and castle walls were stunningly beautiful. Then, I noticed the swan by the moat. So there are swans here too? I thought as I stopped to take a closer look. As I glanced around, a small shop sign caught my eye, next to a traditional Japanese confectionery shop facing the alley. The shop was so small that I might have missed it if I had been walking with a specific destination in mind. This might be a nice way to kill time. With that thought, I passed under the shop's Noren curtain and stepped inside. And so, I decided to spend my free time within the cozy confines of the shop. Chapter 17. Chinatsu looked at her sleeping grandmother's face, and even though she knew her grandmother was unconscious, she still said, "I'm here, and I'm sorry for last time." After that, she greeted various relatives she hadn't seen in a long time. Since they were her father's relatives, they naturally knew what her father had done and what their current situation was. However, perhaps because Chinatsu was still a high school student, and she and her mother had always been closer to their relatives than her father was, no one spoke ill of Chinatsu or her mother, says Yuka. Such a pitiful child. However, what left Chinatsu feeling a sense of discomfort was how naturally her great-aunt and uncle said those words. Section. You're telling me Junji suddenly came back now, after all this time? Those angry words from her uncle were heard on the second night after Chinatsu arrived, while she and Akane were in their grandmother's room, taking turns wiping her body and checking on her. Along with several angry voices, footsteps could be heard from the other side of the sliding door. The door was thrown open, revealing the face of her father, whom she didn't want to see. Behind him stood a young woman with a noticeably large belly, holding his hand. "Why do I have to be criticized for coming to see my own mother, brother? What nerve you have, showing up suddenly without any notice. Don't you feel sorry for Chinatsu?" her father shouted at her uncle, who likewise angrily shouted back. Chinatsu. Only then did her father notice Chinatsu and Akane sitting beside their grandmother's bed. The young woman beside her father flinched to that name. "Why is Chinatsu here? Don't tell me Suzuku is here too?" Her father, without caring about the woman whose hand he was holding, walked into the room and asked loud to no one in particular, "No, Mom isn't here." Akane told me that grandmother wasn't in good condition, so I came alone. "I see," her father replied, sighing with relief. Although he had been informed about his mother's condition, there had been no confirmation that he would come. However, since it was his own mother's health at stake, it was expected that he might show up eventually. Suzuka had allowed Chinatsu to come alone because she had a good relationship with Chinatsu's grandmother, who is her mother-in-law. And the reason why she, herself, didn't come was because she knew her presence might cause unnecessary tension or conflicts in such a delicate situation. However, unexpected events can still happen despite these precautions. "That person behind you is?" Chinatsu asked, though she already knew the answer, looking at the young woman who was staring at them with a tense expression. "Her name is Satumi. She's carrying your brother." "That's why I wanted her to meet my mother." As her father said the words she had expected, the woman named Satumi opened her mouth. But before she could even speak, Chinatsu's uncle and other relatives behind began to shout angrily. They said things like, "What makes you think you can step foot in this house? And, you have no right to see mother." Satumi stood there, enduring the barrage of angry words. Chinatsu didn't understand why, but she felt a surge of anger. Not at the woman who had probably taken her father from her and her mother, but at her father and the other adults arguing in such a situation. "All of you, enough." Before she knew it, she had already shouted those words. "You guys have gone crazy. Grandmother is here. Can't you see? I came all the way here thinking I would talk to her and apologize when she woke up because I know how sad it would be if she was gone. I waited because I wanted to have a proper conversation with her. Isn't everyone else here for the same reason? And yet, why are you all fighting in front of her?" Chinatsu, especially you, Dad. You too, Uncle. You know that Satumi-san is a pregnant woman, but you're all making her stand in the cold. What if it harms the baby? Is this the time to exchange harsh words? Aren't you adults? Act like it." Chinatsu spoke out in anger, and in that moment of fury, she finally understood why Hajime hadn't come with her. He had wanted her to focus on saying goodbye without having to deal with anything else. It was outrageous to have such disputes while waiting for her grandmother to wake up, especially when they didn't know if she ever would. Surely, this was exactly what Chinatsu was thinking at that moment. Originally, Chinatsu didn't think her uncle and the others were the kind of people who spoke so harshly. At least to her, they had always been kind. But for them, the possibility of losing her grandmother was far more significant than it was for Chinatsu, who lived far away and only saw her occasionally. When people are under such strain, an outsider's presence can cause tensions to explode. That was what seemed to be happening right before her eyes. Therefore, Hajime decided not to become that disruptive element. He let Chinatsu go alone so she and everyone else could wait with a calm heart. Her uncle, father, and the others looked embarrassed as they fell silent. In contrast, the woman, who remained standing with a tense expression since her arrival, looked both apologetic and somehow resolute. Seeing the difference, Chinatsu realized that her father had brought her there for his own sake. He wanted his mother's approval, to be told he wasn't in the wrong, or maybe even to be scolded. Perhaps the woman knew this as she came along with him. Despite being pregnant, she pushed herself. She came here fully aware of everything. Perhaps to be berated, to apologize. Perhaps it was for the sake of the child she was carrying. No matter what words were thrown at her, this might be the first and last chance for her unborn child to meet their grandmother. Satumi-san, right? At least come inside. The heating is on, so it's warm here. And although I don't know much, it might be more comfortable to sit on a cushion. Seeing the adults remain motionless, Chinatsu spoke to the woman. When she slowly sat down as suggested, the tense atmosphere shattered, and she softly apologized to Chinatsu. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. To you, and to everyone. I'm so sorry for taking your father away from you, but I couldn't give up on this child, and because of me, everything is ruined. I'm truly sorry. The woman kept her head down, repeatedly apologizing to Chinatsu, words likely coming from the depths of her heart. Her father, watching this scene, seemed paralyzed, unable to say anything, let alone support Satumi. This sight instantly cooled the anger that had been boiling within Chinatsu. She felt the chains inside her break, and she thought, whatever. Looking at her father and the apologizing woman, she felt neither sadness nor anger, just a sense of finality. So she spoke from her heart, addressing the woman in front of her, loud enough for her father and the surrounding relatives to hear. I have someone very important to me. That someone insisted on taking me here even when I hesitated whether it was all right for me to come. However, he spent the night in a different place, saying that it's not his place to be here during an important farewell. Still, he told me he'll stay somewhere nearby, ready to come if I needed him. He's someone who is as important to me as my mother, and he's someone who cares for me deeply. Then, she looked straight at her father and continued. She wanted to dispel the sense of discomfort that she had felt since she arrived. That's why, we're fine even without you. Mom and I aren't pitiful just because you left us. We're happy and will continue to live happily. Finally, she turned to Satumi, who still had her head bowed before continuing again. Satumi-san, you don't need to apologize. I just hope you give birth to a healthy baby. After all, that child will be my first brother. Having said her piece, Chinatsu fell silent. No one said a single word and the room descended into stillness. However, that silence was eventually broken by, "You've grown so much, Chinatsu-chan." Her grandmother's voice. Her grandmother, who had been sleeping weakly all this time, opened her eyes and looked at Chinatsu with a clear, firm voice. "Grandma." Chinatsu, as if dispelling the tense atmosphere she had caused earlier, knelt by her grandmother's bedside and gently took her hand. Yes, it's your grandma. It's been a while, Chinatsu-chan. You've grown into a beautiful person, inside and out." Her grandmother smiled warmly and held Chinatsu's hand tightly. "Grandma, I'm sorry for the harsh things I said before." It's fine. I know that wasn't how you truly felt. Besides, I'm sure you came all the way out here just to see me." "Thank you." Chinatsu's grandmother laughed as she responded to Chinatsu's apology, her consciousness seemingly clear. She was just as Chinatsu remembered. Despite her gentle nature, when she got angry, she could be quite terrifying. With a serious expression, she glared at Chinatsu's father from her bed. "And what are you doing here?" Mother," She also called out the flustered relatives, making such a fuss until my dear little Chinatsu-chan had to step in and calm you all down. I can't even sleep properly. It's disgraceful. I can't even die in peace. We're sorry. Her father's and uncle's heads hung low like scolded children. Her grandmother sighed and turned to Satumi. What's your name? Nice to meet you. I'm Kaizuka Satumi. Startled but composed, Satumi answered clearly. Chinatsu watched, feeling out of place, but unable to look away from the interaction between her grandmother and Satumi. My son has caused you trouble. I can't offer you my blessing right now. But as Chinatsu-chan said, the child bears no blame. Take care of yourself and have a healthy baby. Satumi bowed her head, her shoulders shaking slightly. I'm getting sleepy again, but I'm also hungry. I thought I wouldn't care whatever happened to me, but I guess I need to hang in there a bit longer. With a soft sigh, her grandmother closed her eyes. Grandma? No. It's okay. She's just sleeping. But this is the clearest her consciousness had been in a while. Maybe she'll really get better. Akane reassured the worried Chinatsu, who then stood up, relieved. Chinatsu-chan? In response to Akane calling out to her from behind, Chinatsu simply said, thanks for everything. I'm leaving now. She quietly slipped past her still silent father and headed toward the entrance. She knew where she wanted to go. She just wanted to hear his voice and feel his embrace. At that moment, she wanted to be with Hajime more than anything. Chapter 18. Chinatsu. It was only for a little while, but I was able to have a proper talk with Grandma. Chinatsu, I want to see you. Hajime, where are you? Those were the messages I received from Chinatsu on the second night. It wasn't very late, but with this place having fewer lights than Tokyo, the streets were already dark, and I was about to head back to the hotel when I received those messages, so I immediately called Chinatsu. Hello, Chinatsu, Hajime? Even though I knew it was Chinatsu on the other side of the phone, both of us still said each other's names. And, the moment I heard her say my name, I was able to somehow feel that something she once kept inside her had disappeared. I'm near the castle. Yeah, can I come there? I really want to see you. Really? Hearing her say she wanted to see me, and the way she emphasized it multiple times, made her feelings clear even over the phone. Of course, I also wanted to see her. Is everything okay now? Yeah, I'm not sure, but I apologized to Grandma and we had a proper talk. I see. There might not be any buses left. Can you take a taxi? Wait for a second. Hajime, is it okay? Thank you. Hajime, just now, my cousin, Akane, said she's going to drive me. Is it okay if I meet you on the road in front of the castle? If she can drive you, that gives me peace of mind. Sure, the castle is lit up for the snow festival and looks beautiful. I also wanted to see it with you. I'll wait for you here. I didn't know what had happened at Chinatsu's grandmother's house, but her voice sounded cheerful, which made me feel relieved. She must have had a good conversation with her grandmother, regardless if it was long or short. As long as they were both satisfied, that was enough. After hanging up, I looked up at the sky. Maybe because there were fewer lights on the streets, or because of the high altitude, or because the air was so cold it seemed to freeze. The moon and stars above looked incredibly beautiful. Section. While I waited in front of the castle, a car pulled up along the road, and Chinatsu got out. I gave a small nod to the woman, probably a university student, sitting in the driver's seat. I was grateful that she was willing to drive Chinatsu even though it was already night. Hajime. As I was giving a nod, Chinatsu suddenly called out and immediately ran towards me, hugging me so suddenly that I almost fell over. It was something I hadn't expected, but I somehow managed to stay on my feet and caught her in my arms. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the woman in the car looking at us with her eyes wide open, which made me a bit embarrassed. But Chinatsu didn't seem to care at all. Instead, she grabbed my face with both hands as if dissatisfied that I was looking elsewhere and, wait, Chinatsu. I felt a soft feeling. After a moment of daze, my brain finally managed to process the fact that she had kissed me, and I hastily pulled away. Outside, we're outside, and your cousin is watching us with wide eyes. HMPH, you pulled away. Hajime. Chinatsu sounded very upset and acted sulky about it, so I asked her anxiously. No, it's not that I didn't like it, but, that aside, what's wrong, Chinatsu? Did something happen back at your grandmother's house? A lot of things happened, but it's all good now. I just really wanted to see you, and once I did, I couldn't stop myself. Don't think you can get away with anything just because you're cute. Although, I suppose I should let you get away with it. There were still passers-by, people here for the snow festival, tourists, and locals. Despite feeling their eyes on us, when I saw Chinatsu smile, I found myself not caring about anything else. Even though Christmas had passed, the lights that brightened lovers' nights were still shining. I was sure that made it okay for us too. The stars in the sky and the lights on the ground sparkled, and under them, various snow sculptures beautifully reflected the light. Chinatsu looked at them and spoke. It's called a snow festival, right? I know Christmas has already passed, but what do you say about having a belated Christmas date? I had no objections at all. Section. The square wasn't too big, but it was filled with various ice sculptures. The lights were beautifully adjusted, making the castle and trees glow in a magical way. Wow, everything's amazing. I think this must have been the first time I went here during this time of year. Really? It's my first time too, so that makes me a bit happy. Foo. It turned out to be quite a Christmas, didn't it? But maybe it was for the best. Dinner would have been fun too, but I think I ended up liking you even more. Hajime, I didn't want to point this out, but aren't you overflowing with too much affection today? Chinatsu, I can't help it. It's all your fault. Hajime, I see. It's all my fault, apparently. Welp, if she says so, then it can't be helped. Are you saying you would not like it if your girlfriend's affection was overflowing for you? There's no way I wouldn't like it. If anything, it makes me very happy. Indeed, it was nice being in a place where nobody knew us. We didn't need to worry about others or about Chinatsu having to disguise herself. We could just enjoy our date. Here, we weren't just an inconspicuous boy and a popular girl from high school. We were simply Satou Hajime and Minamino Chinatsu, a pair of lovers. Chapter 19. After looking around the area, Chinatsu and Hajime bought warm drinks from a vending machine and sat on a bench to warm themselves. Speaking of which, I spent most of my time at my grandmother's house waiting for her to wake up and talking with relatives. But what did you do to pass the time, Hajime? Chinatsu asked Hajime about something that had been on her mind. He had never given a specific answer, only saying he found ways to kill time. In response, Hajime looked a bit embarrassed as he pulled something from his pocket. He took Chinatsu's hand, opened it, and gently placed it there. It's the key case with a bear that we bought together, but I thought it'd be nice to add something matching, so I made this. Consider it a Christmas gift from me, although it might look a bit cheap considering it's my first gift for you. What he handed her was a small accessory shaped like a single wing. Though tiny, it was intricately designed and looked like an angel's wing, with a hard texture that appeared to be made of a transparent stone. Under the surrounding light, the wing reflected various shades, making it look even more beautiful. Wow, it's beautiful. Eh? Did you make this, Hajime? Hajime nodded. I didn't know about it either. But it's not stone, it's called UV resin. The shopkeeper said you could get the materials from a 100-yen shop. They had a workshop, and one of the molds was for this single wing accessory. As Chinatsu admired the piece, Hajime took out another one just like it and showed it to her as he continued. I made one for myself too so that we can match. And, remember when you looked up the game you were playing? As Hajime asked, Chinatsu quickly recalled the game. Hyokurinri. It was the subtitle of the game, and a phrase she had looked up because she didn't understand its meaning. The meaning was a man and a woman pledging their eternal love to each other. The Hyoku no Tori, a bird born with one wing that must always fly as one with its mate. And the Rinri no Eda, branches that had grown together as two and become one. Well, it was a bit of a stretch, but I had the shopkeeper help me. I made yours and mine so that when combined, they form a complete pair of wings. It was my first time making something like this, so I messed up a few times, but right before you called, it finally said properly without any chips. Hajime felt an overwhelming affection for the person in front of him. Haha, Hyokurinri sounds heavy, doesn't it? But it seems I ended up putting more weight into it than I thought. Also, there's another reason why I shaped it like a wing. I found out while making it and failing a few times. Listening attentively to Hajime's words, Chinatsu made sure not to miss anything. Apparently, wings and feathers symbolize living confidently and freely for yourself. Live confidently and freely. So, I thought if we both had matching wings, I could stand confidently beside you, Chinatsu. After all, I'm not confident enough to stand on my own wing alone, together, as Chinatsu and Hajime. But if I'm with you, Chinatsu, I feel like I can be that confident person. Seeing Hajime smile as he said that, it no longer mattered where they were. Without thinking, Chinatsu leapt into Hajime's arms for what must have been the 100th time. She hugged him with all her might. You're so unfair. Hey, you've been saying that a lot lately. Hajime caught her in his arms, smiling in an endearing, slightly troubled way. You're unfair. I wasn't able to pull off a surprise gift. After all, I wanted to at least do something special for our first Christmas, you know. Something that makes me feel like a proper boyfriend for you, Chinatsu. She had given Chinatsu an unimaginable amount of things, and despite actually being capable of anything, he always lacked confidence in a strange way. Idiot. Well, it's not something fancy that I bought, heck, it's not even a proper accessory, and it might look a bit clumsy. But that was exactly why Chinatsu's heart swelled with emotion. This is perfect. I don't want anything else. Yeah, thanks, Chinatsu. Chinatsu's words were strained, but Hajime still thanked her and gently wrapped his arms around her, hugging her tightly. Despite everything, no matter what anyone said, it should have been Chinatsu who was giving thanks. She rubbed her face against his chest, knowing she couldn't show her current expression. At that moment, she thought that it was impossible for her to live without this person, who seemed so mature yet occasionally laughed like a child, who was shy, kind, and irresistibly lovable. He wasn't as bright as midday or as dark as night, but he lit up her life as gently as the morning mist or the evening twilight. Living without Hajime seemed impossible for her now. They might not be able to go anywhere with one wing, but together they could become a pair of wings, like the Hyokunotori bird. Actually, Hyokunotori can also mean happily married couple. Ah, it feels heavy, but this weight brings me such joy, Chinatsu thought. In the cold, wrapped in Hajime's warmth, Chinatsu found herself deeply, helplessly in love. End of Volume 3, Me, Her, and a Pair of Wings.